Cold at the touch, dead in the eyes, no signs of life no more. I put your love under the knife. Leave me to die here all alone. No signs of life no more, no. A crying dove may never fly. Black and white. Yeah. Black and white. Oh, 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 oh. Just black and white. No more. Just let me go, it's only right. For all I know, it's only matter. It's calico, it's black and white. Just let me go, it's only right. For all I know, it's only matter. It's calico, it's black and white. White, white, white. Black and white. Yeah. Black and white. Oh, 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 oh. Just black and white. Black and white.
Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Simracersworld TV. We're on for the fourth part of this stream, the next level racing 24 hours of COTA, the Circuit of the Americas. And it's me, Hasse Römer, alongside Edward May, just stretching our tired bodies and warming up the voices for our last 4 hours of commentary here with you this very morning. And Edward, have you had a bit of a rest, or have you had open eyes all night, mate?
I may have had a little power nap, but aside from that, I am running on pretty much carrying over the energy I had at the end of last broadcast, with obviously a little extra liquid energy in my system, courtesy of cans of, well, not just liquid energy, but they're liquid death, aren't they, really? So they're not the healthiest thing in the world, but they're going to keep me going, and that's all that matters here, because we've got 4 hours of brilliant endurance racing, and I can see already that Ben Cornett is leading this race, as the Apex Hunters United LMP2 car was doing when we left off, but that gap has increased to a margin of just over 2 minutes and 20 seconds, so a healthy gap for the Apex Hunters United LMP2 car. And then we're going down through the field. We can see that it's COTA, the Sim Controls X Volante Esports car. They have got 4 minutes and 30 seconds to the Team DRC Red car, Mateusz Debschuk, in that Porsche RSR. And Team DRC Red have done a good job catching up through the field. We did see them have troubles and strife earlier on, but they've managed to recover from that point. And then Dennis Neidhart in the .exe Esports family car, the lovely purple raccoon, as we like to mention there. Lovely, lovely livery. Looking a little bit bent and buckled. You can see the rear wings not looking quite the angle it's supposed to be, but that's not hampered him that much. He's got a healthy margin of 1 minute to Adam Talsma further back in the other Porsche RSR. There's plenty of Porsches actually in the GTE class, but still a decent enough spread of other makes. We have, of course, the Ferraris as well. But then we're going to go down to have a look at the GT3s, and it's Jeremy van der Klaats in the DSCDA Esports Silver car, leading Project Dynamic 2 by the margin of just over 1 minute 20 seconds. So that gap has increased over the night, Hasser, and that is the car that has got the one and only Adam Christodoulou behind the wheel. He was doing a fair few stints last night, wasn't he, Hasser, when we were watching him? And then finally, rounding out the podiums of the fields, we have René Dugin in the iRacing Netherlands blue car. And while he is close on the road, that is actually 4 minutes the margin between himself and Louis Egerton on the road. So while they are similar on track in terms of where they are, it's not actually a fight for on-track positions at the moment, Hasser.
No, indeed it isn't, and it's no surprise really here, as we're past the 16-hour mark of this race. So we've got just under 8 hours left, and at this point, just looking through the timing tower, the table of things, if you will, I think the closest car is on track, separated by 20-some seconds at the moment. It's Robin Menz, who's in for PM Esports here in the 37 LMP2. They were doing quite well on the comeback trail when we left off last night, and they are still in 7th place. And they're actually not too far back on the Project Dynamic LMP2 car, who's right ahead of them by about 35 seconds, which is, after 16 hours of running, it's not all that much. We've got the 4 Elements Racing team in behind, 25 seconds back on them. So that is the closest on-track battle at the moment, alongside the Roaring Chicken Nuggets and Nick Stoop and the 142 Ferrari GTE car, bent and buckled, seemingly having had a rough time over the night. And here's Stefan van der Velde for Next Level Racing in the GTE car as well. And speaking of slightly bent, look at that front end of the car here on the side as well.
Not pretty, is it?
Worse for wear, isn't it?
Yeah, not looking too pretty. And I've also had a little bit of a look through the rest of the GT3 field, and it's Bod Boland behind the wheel of the Simracers Esports car, and the margin back to Richard Verschoor in the trackside Wolfpack car, the car that was actually on pole position in GT3, is 19 seconds. So this is a gap that's starting to develop and starting to close down at the moment, it seems, because it is that trackside Wolfpack car, the Richard Verschoor machine, that's seemingly a bit faster than Bob Boland at the moment. Gained about, let's have a look, that was just about 0.6 of a second from the 210 car. So he is closing slowly but surely, and maybe later on in this evening, or not in this evening, in this morning, sorry, I need to switch my mind over to the morning, but it's going to be a battle that could start to develop sooner rather than later, because Richards is on a charge in the GT3 class.
Yeah, very much so, and it's going to be interesting to see whether they can make anything of it really here. I'm just going to have a fix around because my SDK, the broadcast software that we're using, has been choosing to act up with me here this morning. I tried everything to get it to work, and now I can't see anything on my event viewer. So if we miss anything, please let me know, Edward, and I'll do my best to get it in, but I hardly even, it seems at least, have the real possibility of recalling any replays. It could be that I've had a reset of the thing, and that's the reason why, but I just wanted to mention it because it could be a disappointing thing if I'm all of a sudden not able to go on to the replays, but we'll carry on in the best of British mentalities. Here is indeed Richard Verschoor and that aforementioned number 210 Mercedes, the Wolfpack, indeed, and they're on the hunt for cars ahead. 18 seconds, Bart Boland and the Simracersworld Esports having seemingly done well over the night as well, and they're in 5th place, and that means they've been climbing the order. The question is what the gap is up to Edward Lack and the CXR Project Black Audi. Of course, is still running around with a wing that just seems to, for the most part, disappear behind the roof of the car whenever you're watching it.
It might actually be working out for them. Maybe the angle of the rear wing might be helping them out through some of the left-hand corners, of which there are quite a few of this COTA circuit. So maybe that's not hurting them too much. Edward Lack behind the wheel of the 223 car, trying to set his sights on bigger and better things. They were at one stage, I think, in 2nd place earlier on in the race, but the damage they've managed to get now has been, as we mentioned in the second part of the stream, it's just proving a little bit too much to bear. It's really, I think, having a knock-on effect because it's not in a great shape, is it, Hasse, to be honest, and I think that's probably making they're losing some straight line performance with the damage. Any amount of aero damage in iRacing really can have a big impact on your straight line speed, and as a result, you're getting more drag. You're having to spend longer going full throttle down the straights, which is hurting your your fuel consumption as well. So everything is being affected by that little bit of damage, or not a little bit, a lot of damage on the rear of the car, and it's unfortunate that they haven't been able to get that repaired at all.
No, and it's not really possible, as far as I'm aware, at least, with both the GT3s and the GTEs, when you get that superficial kind of damage. It's not something that you can really get fixed, at least not to a 100% degree, which is something I know that iRacing has been wanting to fix, alongside the bent carbon rear wing that you're looking at the moment, which is rather immersion braking. Because speaking of braking, it's what carbon fiber does if overstressed. It doesn't bend, it breaks. So rather unrealistic, we could say. And I'm really hoping that this broadcast software of ours is going to want to play along at some point, because to me I'm seeing no incidents in the event viewer, which is a little bit of a problem, to be honest. And I'm thinking to such a degree where I'd like to just throw you over to the waiting screen.
Just had an incident, I think, Hasse.
But I cannot see it, and I cannot recall the replay, which is why I want to just restart our timing software. It might throw a bit of a buckle under the live timing as well, but I'll get a new link back up as soon as it's back up, because I just think it's worth a try. It's just not going to be long. We're talking seconds rather than minutes. I'm gonna quick you over to this screen, and I will be back in a short moment. So let us see. At least the event viewer is back. That is, after all, the most important thing. So it might not be giving us the replay transitions, neither picture or sound. I'm afraid we're just gonna have to live with that. So I'm afraid if it's a little abrupt when we go on and off replays. Do you get the transition, Edward, or is it?
No, I'm not getting the transition either. But
right.
As they say, the show must go on, and we're going to be putting on a great show, of course, as we always endeavour to do.
Yeah.
On Simracersworld TV, and I'm sure that the lack of transition isn't going to detract at all, is Asa, because what the people are here for is some great action, and I'm certain with the likes of Richard Vishaw putting on a good charge, gaining a little bit slowly but surely on Bob Boland, as Bob Boland actually has to try and navigate a little bit of traffic getting crossed over itself. We're going to get a replay here of exactly what happened to Bob Boland. It says on my event view that he had a bit of a crash, so we're going to see what happens going into turn one. Oh, he just over-rotates the car, manages to get on the brakes nice and early, but then goes forward and actually collides with the rear of, I'm not sure which of the LMP2 cars that was, but at the very least he did get back onto the throttle a little bit too soon, trying to claw back some time, and in the result of that, he gave a little bit of a friendly nudge, a bit of a kiss to the rear of an LMP2 car, but nothing too dramatic. They managed to keep going in one piece, thankfully, Hassa.
Yeah, that was nice to see. Always nice to see when it's not worse than that, but a close call with one of the LMP2 cars there, a slight touch even, but I think no more than that. And indeed the show shall and must go on. Good morning, Roll, and to everyone else tuning in for these wee hours of the morning. Indeed, I hope you've settled in with your coffee and your breakfast, and you're enjoying the Sunday to come in a nice manner. PM Esports is in the pits, and it's Matthias Karjalainen.
Karjalainen.
Oh, it's certainly not but Boland, but I see. Ooh, so it is just this the something with the timing software that seems to be playing up, because as you can see now, the timer has stopped itself, and it says we're still watching Bud Boland as well, which we very much aren't, which is to be honest rather annoying. Let's see if we do anything to help it along. There we are. We'll keep our eyes on it and try to nurse it along as like a stricken car, if you will. Something that you can only rev to about 80% and have to downshift a bit late as well when coming into the tidies and twisties. But it is Karjalainen in the 37 machine, and look at all the rubber, the marbles, the dust that's been picked up on the front of the car. It looks like it's an integrated part of the paint job by now.
Yeah, that's something I really love though in iRacing and just in real racing in general, is at the end of a long 24-hour race, if you've watched the races like Le Mans or Nürburgring 24 hours, you see the cars coming through down the victory road, down the pit lane, and you see all of the rubber, all of the marbles that have accumulated on the car, and it does look absolutely beautiful. I think what I do is that they sort of quickly after the race is done, I think they coat their cars in some sort of special spray, some special finish that manages to preserve the car as it is when it basically comes and sits on the podium. So you get to see all of the little battle scars, all of the little bits of rubber that have accumulated on the car, and it's a nice little touch. Yeah, I think every single little blemish, every mark has its own story to tell, which is what I love about an endurance race, that these little stories, they're obviously not big things, but you get to feel, I think, just the sheer sense of the achievement that's been done by all of the drivers. Of course, it's virtual, so it's just a little sort of, I guess, visual touch, but it's still very nice to be seeing on iRacing. As we're following Karjalainen down the start finish, you can just see the amount of speed he's able. Absolutely sends it in full on over 90-degree lock. He doesn't try and coast it in. He really just the steering wheel around, trying to get the front of the car, pitching it in. He's not trying to be tall kind as he's really manhandling the LMP2 Hase. Apologies.
We're having a bit of a technical fit here in the morning hours, and I have disconnected from iRacing. So I'll throw you onto the waiting screen. I'll join back in as quickly as I can. I'll make sure to be swift about it, and we'll be right back. And so I believe we're back, all better, with the sim back up and running. Edward is still with us, I believe. I hope. I think he very much is, because perhaps with a mute
I
button.
am. Don't worry, I'm still
so?
here. I'm just making sure everything's all working on my end as well, which it seems to be for the moment. So Hasse, I think we've got everything just about sorted out of the way, and we can focus now on some of the on-track battling. And I've noticed that during this little bit of downtime we've had, is that the trackside Wolfpack car has come into the pit and back out again. So that gap is now increased between Bod Bolan and now Jordan Reinders in the trackside Wolfpack machine. I'm not entirely sure how you would pronounce that, Hasse, but I'm sure you, the linguistical wizard, will know.
Yeah, I'm just touching through because I want to see the spelling. I don't quite remember, because there's so many names in a race like this as well, and sometimes you come in and you're really having to be swift on your learning curve. Indeed, it's Jordan Reinders. So you're not too far up there, Ed. Doing a sterling job yourself, are you? Young man, it's beautiful. As we're back on. And by the way, I do apologize for our technical issues. We've been running into way more technicals here on our 100th broadcast than I can safely say that I've been running into on all my previous broadcasts so far on the channel, I think. So it has really been a night of hiccups here and there. But we're soldiering on, and it seems that we're back to running again. And by the way, Bart Chevalier, I'm afraid, might have had an issue here. It's certainly not Mark Gibson. But it does seem to me that the... just gonna see if we can... Yeah, it does seem to me, I was just about to say, it does seem to me like the timing software is a little bit on its edge this morning. Perhaps it didn't get the right foot out of bed this morning. It seems to be a little hard to work with, but we're getting along, doing our best, as always. Edward Leck has had a bit of an off track, and this time it seems it's back up and running. This is the 223 CXR car. We've been seeing it before. This is a very, very, very relaxed off track, however, and I think I am getting closer to the key of understanding this. We can actually get a chance to see for how long the off track incident indeed did take place over. And when I look into it, I can see that if it's only for a second or so, it was probably just a short one. And we'll just leave it there. Because it's not the first time we've hopped over to skip into stuff like that. And we're always learning here. So with all the hiccups aside, we had a brilliant night of racing yesterday, Ed. I'm sorry, I did cut you over there.
Well, I was just going to say that it does like to sort of alert us for the smallest of infringement, doesn't it? It's a bit like a little snitch, just being, oh, he's gone off the track, oh, he's gone wide, oh, he's track extending, oh, that's an incident point, go have a look at this, everyone. It's a little bit like that, you know, as a sort of that kid in school that no one likes to remind. It's the one that, it's always that kid, I think, yes, the kid at the moment, is the kid that reminds everyone, the teacher, about the homework that was due, that you haven't done. It's that kind of, it's that at the moment, I think.
I think it is here. Rondi Heyman has had a problem, and it seems to be a problem of longer duration.
Ooh.
Oh, a piece of contact with the steel barrier. And the 269 CCTS Esports Endurance car that looked relatively clean as well. Still with a clean rear wing as well, but that's a big dent to the front end of his car. And a bit of troubles there brewing along for them. So just a little word there to all of our users of our otherwise very reliable and useful live timing system that of course also relies on the very same live timing that I get, and it relies upon the stability of the live timing and broadcasting software on my end, which right now seems to be a rather small village in Russia, as they say in Denmark. And that means that right now, I'm afraid the live timing is having a bit of a fit. And I'll do my best to stay on top of it, could see that it was had stopped counting a few minutes back. We're back on now, but just to let you know, I'll try to keep it running to the best of my abilities. But yeah, as I said earlier, usually it is a very stable piece of software, indeed, and it's I don't even really recall having had these sort of long-running issues on any of the broadcasts I've done here with SDK. That'd be either sprints or endurance races. Mark B. Gibson is in for the race leaders. Still Apex Hunters, United LMP2, the number 3 car that has been leading from, well, not from the get-go. It took him a bit of time. I think they had some bad luck early days in this race, but they've certainly managed to mend their own position. And they're nowadays, I was about to say, Edward, they're doing rather well.
Rather well's a little bit of an understatement, I think. So they're leading the race by just over 2 minutes. Got a nice margin to Paul Seal up ahead in the CXR Project Black car. I think the CXR Project Black was actually the car that put it on pole, but since then they just haven't been able to match the sheer race pace that Mark B. Gibson and, of course, his Apex Hunters United LMP2 teammates have been able to do at this stage. And of course, if you're watching us earlier in the stream in the night, you would have noticed that they do have an ace up their sleeve, so to say, and it is the one and only Shane van Gisbergen, SVG himself, racing here this evening for what is, of course, the 100th race broadcasted here on Simracersworld TV. So he's come to celebrate with us, Hasser, and it's nice to see that some small fry like SVG is here with the might of Simracersworld TV.
Yeah, very much so. It's it's something we're very happy indeed that people have been actually choosing to hop in with us. To celebrate, indeed. I haven't seen this Apex Hunters car in the proper daylight for quite some time, and with the sun rising, it's actually very, very nice. It's the first time for us, Edward, mind you. Most of the stint we did last night was in the darkness, so it's actually the first time we get a proper glimpse of some of these cars. I hadn't any idea that they had a kind of, you see the rust detailing atop the shark fin of the number 3 car?
Yeah, a nice bit of rust on there. Yeah, the performance isn't rusty though, is it? It's squeaky clean so far. I don't think I've seen a single incident apart from obviously I think that we saw one earlier on in the race where there was just a little bit of an oversteer moment, but aside from that, they've been absolutely faultless and squeaky clean.
Yeah, indeed they have. No real surprise, to be honest, to see the position they're in, given the talent on display within their team. And by the way, can I just say my extended apologies for the few moments of technical hiccups we've had this morning. I know it hasn't been bad, and I know the stream is still running and everything. Could have been a lot worse, that's very much true, but it's still annoying to have stuff like our timing tower all of a sudden not working, and the graphics not updating, and all of that jazz. I like everything just to be working nicely. You know, us as Northern Europeans, we're known as perfectionists, and I myself normally very much an exception to the rule, but when it comes to this, I'm very much not. And it's getting up my rear end a slight wee bit in the end, I'd like to say. The Simracersworld GT3 machine there is still going strong in 5th place in the GT3s. And Ben sees within his chat, having just finished a triple stint into the sunrise, into the happy hour, of which we are very much still in, I believe. We have a look at the weather here. It's track temp 18 degrees, air temp 18 degrees, so this is very much happy hour indeed. The track will not get a lot faster than it is right now, and that would actually affect a point that I'm looking forward to seeing this morning and as we go towards noon. It's just how much it's going to be heating up, and just how much grip the track is going to lose once it starts heating up. It's always interesting and it can throw some of the drivers right under the bus, given they've been on the colder surface track for quite a number of hours throughout the night now.
Yeah, it's all about how the track develops over the course of the 24-hour race. I think it's got pretty much the most rubber possible. Like, it's to a certain threshold in iRacing where it doesn't sort of calculate any extra rubber being laid down, and I think we've got to that point now in the race. So it's all about just trying to manage the car, as you mentioned, the heat starting to come in as the sun begins to rise. I think at the moment they'll be able to keep in this 18-degree window out on track for the next, I'd say, couple hours or so, but maybe towards the end of our stint in the comms box here, Hasse, we might start to see the sunrise beginning to have an effect, I think. So that is something, as you mentioned, to have a watch out for. At the moment, though, something to watch out for is Bob Boland's lap times. At the moment, he is 2.5 seconds faster than Jordan Reinders in the trackside Wolfpack car, just behind him in 6th position. So Bob Boland's getting a nice move on. He's been feeling the pressure earlier on in his stint, and since then, now that he's noticed the trackside Wolfpack car going into the pits, really put the pace on, and now he needs to focus on catching up to Morgan Thompson. Morgan Thompson did do a 2 minutes 7.8. Bob Boland did a 2 minute 8.3, so 5/10 lost that previous time, but that can obviously be clawed back, and it's not the biggest of margins. That usually swings back and forth, doesn't it, Hasse, in terms of just the penduluming of pace? We often see drivers losing one time, and then the next lap they gain right back up again.
Yeah, and it's often got something to do with just where people are in traffic as well, and that often has a rather large part to play. In the lap times, when you look at people's consistency, it's often just a showcase at a traffic situation, to be honest. And sometimes you can be pretty inconsistent, to be honest, and still look consistent because, again, traffic. By the way, if any drivers out there are watching along, not while you're in the car, of course, unless you want to, but feel free to hop in to the Simracersworld TV Discord if you're not a member already. Become one. Perhaps the Edlad can go and find the link for it somewhere, and if not, I can. But anyway, if you feel like it, if you feel like a morning chat with us in the booth, ooh, special things, feel free to hop in the interview waiting room, and we'll drag you in, screaming and shouting, full of resistance, against your will, into the commentary booth for a nice and cozy chat. All jokes aside, we'd appreciate that. I don't think we've had a word really with any drivers so far this race, and I would be interested to hear from basically anyone who's done anything through the night, and to have a bit of a word about just how it was. So if there's anyone, feel free to come in and we'll drag you over rather quickly indeed. Just to let you know, the possibilities of such is very much there. Until then, we're still watching Morgan Thompson. The son of a thumb. I'm just carrying over a bit of tiredness here from last night, I have to say. But it's a special feeling doing these 24-hour races. It's a lot of talking over a lot of hours, and at times it has a tendency to get a little bit silly. We do our best to keep it straight, professional, and serious. But at least on my part, as you can probably tell by now, it's not always that I do a fantastic job. At least not at the final bit of the two. But I'm enthusiastic and I really love what I do. So I think that'll weigh out any silly moments to quote the good old John Cleese for a moment there.
All that matters is that if you're smiling, you're having fun. The whole world smiles and has fun along with you, Hasse. And that's why we love to have you here in the comms box, especially doing the comms box with you for these long endurance races. It's always good to be working together with you, and it's always good fun, isn't it? We have a good laugh here, and we're seeing at the moment we're trying to get back to some form of seriousness. This is Bob Boland is trying to catch up to Morgan Thompson, as you mentioned him earlier on, trying to catch up to Morgan up ahead, who's just outside the podium positions, was up there earlier on in this race, as I'm starting to see the internet having a bit of a moment, having a bit of a unpleasant time of things, House. I'm not sure if you're seeing that as well.
I'm not. I'm seeing...
So it's just me.
It's on your end, I'm afraid. I'm seeing things that look pretty stable, to be honest.
And that's fine. As soon as I mention it, it's fine.
Oh yeah, but that's as soon as it's as long as it's not the other way around, I'll be completely happy with that. Mention it, and the problem goes away. It's kind of better than the sort of the curse of the commentator thing. Like mention it, and the problem arises. That's much worse. Anyway, good morning, Richard Wonders. Good morning, Herr Distelbaum. Nice to have you lads along, and good stints being put in last night from you as well. So we're watching Matthew Briggs and the Purple Raccoon. That even though we've given it the very loving nickname of the Purple Raccoon, it's not all that purple, to be honest, when you see it in the daylight. But in the night, it was a festival of Magneto, if you will. And it was beautiful indeed, wasn't it?
Magenta.
Magenta?
Magenta.
Magenta!
I'm sorry, Hassan.
You're gonna cut me out once in a while.
Thank
you for your corrections.
It's not your mother tongue. I'm sorry for believing you, Hassan. It's just funny. It's just funny to tease you a little bit, innit? Makes me feel a bit better about myself, mocking someone that is having this as a second language. It puts me into perspective quite a lot, if I'm going to be honest with you. But still, we're seeing, yes, as you mentioned, the lovely purple raccoon car in his Technicolor glory now. A nice bit of red fading to green, fading to purple. It's a lovely kaleidoscope of colours on that .exe esports car, isn't it, Asa? And, well, we always love a nice livery here, and that is certainly one of them.
Sorry?
Oh, dear me.
Oh Lord, I was trying to keep a straight face
like?
so hard for so long, and I just wasn't doing very well at all. But what a morning we're having here on Simracersworld TV, and a big thanks to all for joining along, for all the giggles, the good times, the bad times, the fun times, and the sad times indeed. With me, Hazelreumer and Edward May. Of course, we had Jack Worrell and Jack Oliphant, the Jack Attack, on for the race start indeed. They will be on as well for the race finish, to take you through the final decisive hours when a bit more of a serious tone is needed and things start heating up again. Obviously, this comedy duo is having a bit of a laugh at the moment, and we're enjoying ourselves rather well, to be honest, in the booth here. Adam Talisman, by the way, is only 23 seconds down on the .exe car, the 117 Porsche 911 RSR here of Digital Apex Racing, and that car's been doing well for a long time as well. They've been in it since the beginning of the race. They've been up there. They've kept incidents to a minimum, and they're still fighting for top spots. Although they've lost a little bit, and that goes for both themselves and the .exe team. They've lost a bit of time overnight. Team DRC Red with the Mateusz Stepchuk, it is, I'm sorry. They've been gaining minutes, and a rather large amount of minutes over the course of the night. The same goes, by the way, and I haven't really mentioned this because I didn't really notice it, but the same goes for the number 101 car with Oscar Wilkins behind the wheel at the moment. It's, of course, Sim Control's Volante Esports, who's been leading for quite some time now. They've extended the gap to over 5 minutes, and as I say that, I'm afraid we've had a problem for Lars Feeling here, Edward. We indeed have. Oh. He had a bit of a spinner for himself quite quickly. Our overlay was having a bit of a freezy moment there. It's getting cold here in December, so you'd understand. And we're back, and it's back as well. Putting up a bit of a fight with us here, but we're managing. We're wrestling it. It's like a big old 8-meter anaconda in the wild of the jungle that really having to put in all my strength to wrestle it about. It's a fight I'm winning. I'm such a man. And all of a sudden we've had a very quiet period. Edward, if you indeed are still there with me. Oh, I'm afraid Edward has left the building, and I think as well, if we're lucky here, that he's actually back. Edward, all good?
You just do a quick DC and RC. I think I may be having to fix it, although it is the early morning. Everyone's starting to log on the computers here in the UK, so the internet's starting to struggle just a little bit, Hassa, but I'm sure it'll get over the hiccups momentarily, and it does. I mentioned the hiccups. They seem to fix themselves, so Oscar Wilkins now we are following, trying to navigate some of the traffic.
Indeed he is. And I was just trying to champ here. It isn't Oscar Wilkins who I'm watching right now. It was actually Jeremy van der Kraats, and another bit of a problem there for the overlay in there. SDK not having the best of days. And I will ensure you I've tried restarting everything, literally everything, and none of it seems to have worked. So we're soldiering on and doing our best to keep it watchable. Here's Jarno Lorey. It's still not Oscar Wilkins. Even with the best of the attempts to confuse a lot of you, as Jarno Lorey has a very, very relaxed bit of a moment there. And he does well for himself to bring it back.
I think everything's working again. Hassa, sorry about that. Am I sounding all right? Am I coming through nice and clear?
You bet you are. You are 5x9, as they say in amateur radio, and it's true for me as well here. You go through nice and clearly.
Lovely jubbly. I'm just having to sort out my iRacing, and I'll be able to get all of the live pictures again, because with the internet hiccup, shall we say, iRacing thought, no, you're not allowed to be in here. You're not allowed to watch all of these lovely cars go around the circuit. You are out of here. So I'll try and get it all sorted. Luckily, Hassa Roma is got it all under control and able to keep himself in the session just about.
just about indeed. As Robin De Becker and another driver here who's usually in the Sunday GT3 World League. Here's Eric Verley in the Next Level Racing 106 car. He drives a Mercedes GT3 car in that series, but interesting to see him in a Porsche 911 RSR here. I think he's getting lapped by the car in 4th place in the GTs. That's very much the case. Mind you, battle's rather stretched for the time being on track. Closest cars seem to be the ones of Matthew Briggs and Adam Talsma. The Brit leading the American by 18 seconds is of course .exe in the 110 car, facing off against Digital Apex Racing, whom we were watching not too long ago. They've made it past on the Next Level Racing Porsche. They are in the thick of traffic for the time being. By the way, we still have the vast majority of our cars here still running today. I'm afraid the 10 car, the 103 machine, I'm sorry, has retired alongside the 191. Yes, indeed. The 22 and 26 LMP2s and the 299 Mercedes as well, but that's it, or so it seems, running down through the order, and happily so that we've got the vast majority of the field still running here, Edward.
Yeah, that's what we love to see, isn't it? Just all the cars keeping the endurance spirit going, managing to keep themselves out of trouble enough, shall we say. They've not been fully keeping their noses clean all the way through, but that'd be a miracle, I think, if any of them were able to do so. So it's good, as you mentioned, having as many cars as possible to take it across the line and keep it going. It shows that it's a well-organised league as well, that all the drivers are wanting to take it across the line, even if their races haven't been the easiest or the best, potentially.
Yeah, indeed. It is. It's always a tough one to come into a 24-hour race. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of patience, and it's a lot easier said than done. And that applies to both the one thing is being competitive in the race, but it's hard enough just to complete it on its own, and that's also why I'm saying that it's so nice to see so many of our cars still running out there.
Absolutely, Hasser. It's lovely to see as we are now getting into what could be, well, it's actually close to starting the 18th hour of this race. We're almost 17 hours done and dusted, and well, it's quite close towards the sort of final stretch of the race where the drivers start to think about maybe making the on-track moves, maybe trying to get the strategy. They're starting to see where they're roughly going to be finishing. They know the ballpark of what their best chance is, what their best sort of finishing position is realistically going to be, and this is when the drivers may start to push a little bit more. Obviously, as you mentioned, we're into the happy hour phase of the race where the track temperature is keeping nice and cool, but the sun is out and about, so the drivers are able to see the apexes finally, whereas before it might have been a bit of a more of a struggle, shall we say.
Yeah, it's always nice to have the sun coming up and the light returning to us, and that doesn't only go for the drivers, it goes for us as well, who can now actually see the cars, see the state, and I think a few of the sponsors of the teams that are running will be happy to see sunrise as well, because they'll be getting a little more for their money's worth. And you came up with a good point on the Ford GT with the strong purple LED lighting that we saw yesterday, that it does indeed increase sponsor exposure as well overnight. The CCTS Mercedes, they're getting a little wide into what I believe is the entrance of the final sector. But no problem. Anything more than that here, still Matthew Briggs. The gap between Adam Talsma, however, and Matthew Briggs, is actually coming down, and it's coming down rather quickly for the time being. Over a second gained over the last lap there from Adam Talsma. So having to think that the Digital Apex Racing 117 car here is looking at a strong return here in the morning hours.
Yeah, it is, and we have been noting that the Digital Apex Racing car has been looking rather strong all race, but it seems to come in sort of flashes almost, doesn't it? It seems to just to appear that they've got loads of pace and they drop off again, and then they suddenly pick up the pace all back again. So it's a bit tricky to sort of figure out, and it's very frustrating as a commentator to watch, because you know that they have the pace, you know that they have the ability. It's just unfortunately haven't been able to really get the consistency behind them at this throughout most of the race. So this is probably their time to try and focus, try and knuckle down, and really set their sights on getting one of these podium places under their control. It seems for the moment that I think second or first is going to be out of their grasp, so it's probably going to be third place is their best realistic shot, and I'm certain that Adam Talsma is going to be doing all that he can behind the wheel of his Porsche 911 RSR to get that up into the podium places and actually make it a Porsche podium lockout in the GTEs.
Very much so, and the Porsche 911 RSR, one of the great race cars of our time, one of the most iconic machines to take to the tracks of the modern era, I want to say, and also going back to olden times, if you will. It's one of the stable names that's been with us in the world of motor racing for many years ago, and going all the way back to the 1970s. With the Porsche, I think all the way back to when it had the model or the serial moniker, if you will, of 915. But the old RSR has been competing for a long time, and it's been updated, like the Porsche 911 has in general. And all of a sudden, it's packing some serious punch, indeed, Edward. A 4-liter flat 6, screaming you past 8,000 RPM when being taken to the line. And that's one of the few naturally aspirated GTs. I'll say that. I guess the Corvette would be the other one, because the BMW is turbocharged, the Ferrari is turbocharged, and the Ford is turbocharged as well. But naturally aspirated, high revving, relatively fuel efficient, although not quite as much as the Ford, but indeed the bestest looking of them all as well. So and by quite a margin, my personal favorite, as you might just be able to tell. Such a lovely car indeed. And I have the pleasure of seeing the Pink Pig, the Le Mans winning 911 RSR from a few years back, driven by another actually than Michael Christensen, the Dane, I believe. And you were mentioning the special coding that the cars are being given when they come across the line, especially as winners of one of the big endurance races. And that was very much the case for the Pink Pig as well. It came in full dust, grit, and marbles coating, if you will. It was dirty, and it was absolutely glorious to behold.
It is. It's absolutely lovely. And as you mentioned, the RSR, it's the car that if I'm driving a GT, I'm always in the RSR. So one long time ago, I used to be in the 488, but me and my team, we switched over to the RSR and we haven't looked back since. It's such a nice car to drive. It's so stable. It's quite forgiving in terms of a GTE on the acceleration, because it's got just a nice stable, low down, easy platform of the wheelbase just to drive and carry the speed through the corners. But as well, there's nothing better than the sound when we get on board of the flat six just roaring away and whining away, isn't it, in your ears? It's such a lovely high-pitched wail almost when you're on board. If we can get an onboard shot of it, Hassa, that will be brilliant for everyone at home, just to get a feel for what the drivers are hearing as well when they're trying to send it around. Here we go. Listen to it accelerate up through the gears. A real sound to behold. It's obviously not quite going to be on par with the real deal, but still beautiful sounding machine.
It is a beautiful sounding machine indeed, and I think the best sounding of all the GTs indeed. Adam Christo is with us in chat. Welcome too. He got lots of support for the 218 car, and what a surprise! But nice to have you along. It's an honor indeed. Elroy Timmer's with us, as well as Peter Kasperken and all the rest of you. Good morning to you. I hope you've had a good night. Whether be that sleeping, whether that be driving, or whether that be watching the broadcast here, even while we were trying to get a bit of a power nap in. And that's actually a problem I've been facing on numerous occasions by now. That when you're signing off late in the evening and you're expected, and maybe expecting yourself as well, to get a bit of sleep, sometimes you just find yourself being so switched on in the brain, if you will, that it's really hard to just disconnect, close your eyes, and go instantly to sleep, isn't it?
Yeah, and then when you do get to sleep, you fall asleep in such a deep slumber that you're at risk of oversleeping. So no amount of alarms can wake you as well if you get into that deep, deep sleep after a nice tiring stint in the car. I think Alan Christodoulou did at one stage, I think, do a triple stint behind the wheel of his Mercedes GT3, which is certainly no mean feat. I think the fuel lasts you just over an hour, so that's 3 consecutive hours at the very least behind the wheel. And I've done, I think the most I've been comfortable doing behind the wheel of a car was 4 hours, but that was very touch and go. It would have been much nicer just to have done 2 hours and left it at that. So I can imagine that Adam Christo, even though he is obviously a real-life racing driver in the GT3s, he might have been feeling a bit of fatigue after that, Hassa.
Yeah, indeed. Look at this. This is not Louis Eggertson. This is our LMP2 race leader, Mark B. Gibson, having a bit of contact twice as well with the CXR, I think, Audi in 4th place in GT3. And a bit of frustration there for the leading LMP, but he seems to be all right in the end here. Mark B. Gibson Once again, apologies for our graphics not really wanting to play ball with me here this morning. Every time I go on to the replay, it doesn't want to give us any kind of transition graphics, which is rather annoying, but it's something we can live with. More annoying so, it tends to keep on showing the driver that we were actually watching before, instead of giving us the driver that we're actually on with the replay with. So a bit of a nuisance there, bear with us, and I'll do my best to keep you up to date to what's actually going on. So don't believe the hype, as said by a Public Enemy many years ago, and it's all the truer still in 2020. But Mark B. Gibson still leading LMP2 and by a sizable margin, 2 minutes 23 seconds. It's around 1 lap down to Paul Searle here in the 46 car, the CXR Project Black machine that's been in second place for a long time indeed. And at the moment it's Jelle Belen, the Dutchman, here in the 69, Next Level Racing by SJS Esports car. That's also been doing rather well for itself. They've been sitting in third for quite a while. Indeed. In GTE is Oscar Wilkins in the Sim Controls Volante Esports, the 101 Porsche 911 RSR, light blue and black car. It's the color combination, we've seen it before and we've come to really, well, like, doesn't really say enough about it. I think we've really come to love it. It's a very good looking car indeed. They've had a bent rear wing since pretty early in the race. I'm not sure if they've actually spent their fast repair. Could be that they have, could be that they still have it in arrears. So if it is so, well, all the better for them. And then in second in GT, it's Matthias Depchuk for the team DRC Red. And they had Bram van Putten in some very blistering times throughout the night. That's taken them into this good position they're running in at the moment. And then we have the fight for third in GT, which actually really is heating up at the moment here. Oh, Matthew Briggs very much in the thick of it here for .xe and the 110 for GT, the Purple Raccoon, if you will. But they're really getting hounded by Adam Talsma. The 117 car is closing in rather quickly at the moment, Edward.
He certainly is. The gap is going down lap after lap. That was over 3 seconds he gained last time out. So Adam Talsma is, well, nothing short of on a charge, isn't he? So he's closing in, well, not slowly but surely, a rate of knots, it has to be said. You think you can now see Matthew Briggs as well, just ahead of him up the road down this long back straight. He knows what he's aiming for. You can see the target in his, well, in his windscreen at the front of him. And that's probably going to spur him on even more. That's going to give him the sign that the podium is within sight. And it's all about just managing the tyres, managing the fuel, getting into the position, and getting the move done. And I don't know if Matthew Briggs, I think he's probably, at this stage of the race, might try and defend it, might try and hold on, because, well, there's still a little while to go in this race, but it is where you would, as we mentioned earlier, think maybe about trying to hold on to track position.
Yeah, very much so. Oh, I'm afraid we've had a major problem here, Edward, for Jeffrey Jolker. Oh, the 116 car, that's a major touch of that inside sausage curve, I believe that was. As I think nothing else. Well, boink! Oh, that is a airborne moment as he takes off like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Oh, my word.
Ooh, yeah, I don't know if I want him to be my winged man, though. That's not very pretty driving, but more flying than driving, as you were alluding to there. Hassa did well to avoid the wall, that's for certain. That's the main thing to take away from that, is that he was able to keep himself out of the wall, because that's where the real damage seems to be done. We've seen drivers take a little bit of air going over the sausage curves, but seemingly getting away without too much damage. So that's an interesting quirk of our racing. Usually you'd imagine that going over those would be enough to potentially wreck a car in the real life if they went over the sausage curves at the speeds they were going and in the manner that they were going over them. That could be enough to fully crack the suspension. So thankfully that's not the case, and thankfully that the drivers that have been getting that damage don't need to pay the repair bill, which is, I can assure you, something you don't want to be having to fork out after an endurance race because, well, it does rack up, doesn't it, Asa?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and that's one of the reasons that motor racing, real motor racing, mind you, is rather expensive. Of course, there are a few souls that would say sim racing is a rather expensive hobby in the first place, but sim racing is on a level with so many other hobbies, where it's not really necessarily either more or less expensive than so many other things you'd like to spend your money on in your spare time. I, for one, has been doing quite a lot of bike racing and cycling as well, and that can really quickly turn into an expensive hobby as well, and the same would be true for playing, like if you're doing paintball or soft guns, something like that. That's going to be very expensive quickly, and so it is as well if you're going to go all in and get the most expensive sim rig that you can possibly find out there with the most insane expensive PC build and everything. Yes, you could probably buy a real racing car for that sort of money. But for how long would you be able to run it? That's a very good question indeed. And just have to say that the world of sim racing over the years has opened up the world of racing in turn to so many more people. And that is an absolute pleasure to see. Now, this battle is still getting hotter. Matthew Briggs now just 5 seconds ahead of Adam Talsma.
Yeah, Adam Talsma getting into the frame of things to start maybe filling the rear view mirrors of the car front, trying to pile the pressure on. I think Matthew Briggs is already going to be feeling the pressure, though. His lap times, he's been starting to pick up the pace a little bit, but it's not enough because Adam Talsma is basically just like an unstoppable force. But will Matthew Briggs be the immovable object when it comes down to it, Hassa? I think only time will tell, and it's going to be tricky to put a prediction, but I'd hope, maybe that's just the racer, and hope to see Matthew Briggs really taking the fight to Adam Talsma.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we want to see that, especially here coming into the final third of the race. This is where it's all, or coming into it, we're actually well into it, we're over an hour into the final third of proceedings here. But anyway, this is where things really start to count. And I also feel like all the experienced endurance teams are going to be well aware of this, and they're going to be starting to heat up the action. Every time someone started to catch up, every time it's a battle for position on track now, I expect to see it heating up, because to impede your rivals at this point might seriously cost them time, and at this point it's a risk that might be worth taking as someone dives off into the pits. I think that's Austin Foster in his LMP2. Mateusz Depchuk is in there as well in the DRC red car, but he's 4 minutes ahead of the following machines, those of Matthew Briggs and Adam Talsma as well. So he'll be able to stay ahead come the time where he can leave the pit lane again. So to be honest, even at this stage of the race, I'm a little surprised to see such a spread in GTE, Edward, because it's been pace-wise so close for the entirety of the race.
Yeah, it has. I think there's been a few, maybe potentially incidents. I did see numerous GTEs having a few incidents and accidents during the stream when there wasn't any comms during the sort of the graveyard shift, as we like to call it, and they were caught up in quite a few incidents, both self-inflicted over the sausage curbs, but also from LMP2 cars kind of just trying to carve their way through, because their fights were getting close and they were all trying to get any amount of time they could do, any sort of little gains or advantage they could get. They were really fighting to try and get, and unfortunately in a lot of the situations it was actually at the expense of a GTE. So sadly, a little bit of contact maybe might have started to see these gaps develop a little bit more, but nevertheless these gaps are now starting to come down when they're in the free area and when they're in the daylight, because Talsma is not taking no for an answer, is he? He's seeing that Matthew Briggs is trying to get away, but Adam's not having any of it. He is trying to catch up. He is carrying the speed through the long right-hander, and that is, I believe, Matthew Briggs just up in front. So It's going to start getting very spicy very shortly once he gets past this GT3 car.
Yeah, very much so. It's beginning to heat up, and it's the only place on track for the time being, at least, where it's really doing so. So we're going to keep our eyes peeled on this one as something that's gone rather cold to a degree where you might be thinking it's gone to the fridge for a bit of time. It's starting to become rather edible now, you could say, as Adam Talsma is behind I think that's the second place GT3 car of Project Dynamic 2 and Louis Eggerson, if I'm very much not mistaken. And because there's an LMP2 there as well, so it all makes sense. All of a sudden it is indeed Eggerson there in the 218, the teammate of Adam Christodoulou. It's very much in here in chat, or was in here at least, it's mentioned. And with himself and Shane van Gisbergen on the grid and driving today. Oh, a bit of a luck up there from the Porsche 911 as well. We do indeed have some high-profile names joining us on the grid, which is a great pleasure and, dare I say, an honor to have him along racing with us here tonight. And today, I guess old habits die hard after an evening of broadcasting, but it is not night at the moment. It's actually, even here in Europe, we do have the sun coming out, and thankfully so, because it isn't the longest of days here as we're coming into December. And actually, just touching upon that, Edward, I'm going to be taking part in a 24-hour race on the Nürburgring in not too long. It's going to be on December 12th, and we're going to be running the actual date for the sim date as well. So as you can imagine, the day is going to be very short as such, or especially for a race at the Green Hell. The night is going to be very, very long indeed.
You say 21st of December, because I think that is actually the winter equinox when I think the night is at the longest point it is, Hasse.
Yes, it is.
That's going to be fun. I'm going to be not envying you whatsoever going around the Green Hell in pitch darkness, because there isn't really that much lighting, is there, in iRacing around that circuit, or in fact, much lighting around that track in general. So, best of luck. Hopefully you're not in... hopefully you're going to have a nice setup underneath you, one that's stable, because otherwise... if I was in it, I would only be lasting half a lap before I'd been it.
Yeah, we're going to be driving the Porsche 911 Cup car, which is a lovely car to drive. We do have a somewhat stable setup. It's to a point where you can actually enjoy driving the car, and to which point the 911 Cup car becomes a very enjoyable car indeed to drive. So hopefully the sheer engagement that it provides will be enough to keep us on point. The number 3 car having to go rather slowly around the outside there of the next level GTE machine. Doing so, but it looked a little nervy there for a moment. Now, Edward and I are gonna take a few minutes. I'm gonna hope that everything doesn't go to bad things like last time I tried to take one of these breaks and iRacing decided just to disconnect at the moment I was trying to go on board. But we're on board with our overall leader, the number 3 LMP2 of Mark B. Gibson. We'll take 5 minutes to stack up on coffee, on snacks and whatever we need. But don't move a muscle, don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Simracersworld TV and the live coverage of the 24 hours of the Circuit of the Americas with myself, Hasse Reumer, and Edward May as well, just to make sure that Ed is hearing me as well. There he is. Well, as we are 17 and a half hour to the race, we have seen laughs, we've seen giggles, we have seen slides and crashes indeed. We have seen courage and heartbreak. It's been an enthralling race so far, hasn't it, Edward? As Edward seems to have lost his ability to utter words, and all of a sudden I say something and his ability to utter words has returned to him. I was just about to call you a mute, Edward, but seems that just like I Need Money in a very popular 90s hip-hop movie starring Redman and Method Man, just like I Need Money, all of a sudden you do talk.
Yeah, you're not that lucky for me to be mute, Hasse. You're not getting off that easily. I'm going to be here and going to be keeping you, I don't know, keeping you happy, shall we say, throughout the remainder of our 4 hours here. In fact, we've just gone past the first, what is this, I think the first hour and a bit, I think we've done. I think, yeah, we've done about an hour and a half since we've come back live at the moment, Hasse. So this is going by. We're only here for another, I think, 2 hours and 30 minutes if my timing is right. I could be miles off, but I think that is the plan, or is it an extra? Yeah, it is going to be an extra 2 hours 30 minutes for us here, how's it?
2 hours 30 minutes for us. Indeed, time does fly by when you're having a good time, and I am indeed lucky to be able to spend all this time with Edward May in the booth, enjoying myself, to say the least. Here, still on board with the 3 car because it's just such good shots, but we do have a battle to check back into in GTE. Here is Matthew Briggs, and behind him by 1 minute and 24 seconds here, the car is of Lucas Marouk. That's the Digital Apex machine. They probably had a pit stop. Wouldn't be surprised to see why that's... that could very well be the reason they've lost a bit of time here, and I think it's been a while since we've had Matthew Briggs on the .exe Esports family car into the pits, which again is probably the reasoning behind the gap between the two machines. Expect them to be rather close as they get back on level terms. They were really starting to duke it out with one another, just a few seconds from one another as the Digital Apex car came into the pit lane. And it'll be very interesting to see just how they stand when they get on level terms. Exactly,
it's going to throw up certainly a lot of space, aren't they? As we're going to see the pit stop not coming in just yet for Matthew Briggs, so we might be waiting another couple of laps before we see the battle start to form, but I think it will be just a matter of time, Hasse. Surely we're going to be seeing an on-track battle between these two sooner rather than later.
Yeah, indeed. I think getting a rather spicy request in chat from Benzine. If it's a spicy request, chances are I'm going to honor it. I'm a nonconformist. Benzine, which, if I'm very much not mistaken, is a teammate of the Apex Hunters United LMP2 car. Isn't that right, Ben? Anyway, wanting me to mention the fact that Mark Gibson has missed the apex of turn 1 on pretty much every lap that he's been on, and we're gonna just see if we can get a view of that, because it's not we're not gonna be detrimental to the performance of Mark Gibson or anyone of the drivers of the number 3 LMP2 car, because that would just be outside of its place at the very most. Oh, sneaking up the Oh, the second place GTE car that is just coming out the pit is Adam Christodoulou. So a bit of a shaky moment here, closely followed as well by the 37 machine, which is still in 6th place, just picking up a bit of a 1x there as Mark Gibson heads on down to the start-finish straight. And we'll have a look here. We go on board with Mark. Apex hunting, he's hunting that Apex, and you know what? That doesn't seem like a missed Apex to me. You don't want to go over that, but of course, the fact that we're focusing in could of course bring the very best out in Mark. Exactly. So, which is exactly what I think. And to be fair on him, he doesn't miss a single Apex through the first sector here. This is very much hunting and hitting all of the Apexes. Indeed, brilliant stuff for now. Good always to have a bit of banter as well in chat, Ben. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you all for joining us, by the way. A very good morning, and glad to have you along here on Simracersworld TV for the morning stint of the 24 hours of the circuit of the Americas, of the Hesse Römer, of the Edward May, of many things.
Yes. If I may, if I can go back to what we saw earlier, actually, which was between Mark Gibson getting a little bit close to the rear bumper of Adam Christodoulou down that sort of final sector. I was a little bit worried that Adam Christodoulou was going to be what me and my teammates call in the IMSA racing series on our race. We were worried he was going to be getting LMP'd on, which is not something you want to be doing. It's when the LMP absolutely just comes in, has no regard for you, and just ruins you completely. So he managed to avoid the LMPing and is nice and clean for now.
Getting LMP'd on. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. I just, by mistake, I reset my mic volume, so if I'm loud, if I'm low, please let me know. And if you really think so, man, I gotta go. The rhymes are hot, and I guess Hess is not, because it's on a very, very kindergarten-esque level here this morning, but I'm doing my best to keep the bands going and rolling. And we've had a problem for Jarno Loré here. Just want to show us that it is indeed Jarno Loré that we're watching, but it is. It's not Mark B. Gibson. Don't you worry for a second. It is just my overlay causing a bit of troubles. I didn't really know what would be happening there, but he was indeed losing the rear end. Jarno Loré came about on him, and a bit of a problem there, but that car seems a little stricken to me, Edward.
A little is, again, a bit of an understatement there. It's looking like it has been LMP'd on, as we see the cars not looking too pretty. Is it the entire sort of left rear of the car is a bit upset. Also the front left, the front right, the right rear. No panel of the car I don't think has been safe at all this race, and it's unfortunate to see the Radeon Motorsport car of Jarno Loré down the order where it is, but you can try and spin it around in a positive way and say that it's good to see them still going on, carrying the spirit forward and keeping the perseverance, which is what I love to see. And if they gave medals for effort, they'd be getting an absolute A+, because, well, they absolutely deserve it, don't they? The gold star for Jarno Loré and the Radeon Motorsport team.
Yeah.
Ooh, they were getting a little bit close there as they were coming through off the end of the long back straight. I was worried there that we were going to be seeing a collision between Jarno Loré and one of the iRacing Netherlands cars. I think that is... Let's have a look at that one. That could be Jamie Malema potentially getting a bit too close for comfort and is now going to be carving his way through the field. But then there's an LMP2 car that's trying to find his way through, and I think he just gets through just about cleanly. It was a sketchy moment going through wide, but he made it sticky. He was committed on his movement and they didn't deviate, so good sensible driving from all of them, giving each other just enough space on the racetrack.
Yeah, very much so. Just about making it. Sorry for my moment of silence there before. I heard dog noises. I thought I heard and saw what was coming, and indeed, barks commenced, and I managed to spare you this time around.
Thank you very much.
Which I guess is nice. After all, yes, we do. Sometimes it's interesting to hear the voice and opinions, indeed, of Stella. At other times, not so much. And I'm thinking here, at this point in the morning, we might wake up a sleeping soul or two that might have fallen asleep with the broadcaster in the background. So we'll...
Speaking of waking up, Hassa, I've just seen in the chat Valente Racing here. So good morning to you, boys. You'll be pleased to see that your main man, Oscar Wilkins, is, well, not your main man, but your team is leading the GTE field, doing a great job and has a healthy margin. I'm not sure what it is at the moment. We're having a look at the gaps, and it's 5.5 seconds between Sim Controls X Valente Esports and Team DRC Red. So that gap has been increased. It might be potentially under the pit stops, but even if there is a pit stop due, that's still a 4-minute gap left in this race, Hassa. And well, there's plenty of hours to go, but I think it'll take an absolute miracle for the Team DRC car to really get up to challenge the lead.
Yeah, indeed. Just a quick correction, Edward. It's 5.5 minutes, not 5.5 seconds. You did say 4 minutes after all, so you did kind of save yourself. But
apologies.
But cheers, indeed. 5.5 minutes.
I'm not fully woken up, clearly.
I just had a second cup of coffee poured for myself here as well. Desperately trying to get into proper working mode. Oh.
as the coffee goes down the wrong gullet of Azaramu, he's got me spluttering in my ear. I think he's managed to spare you just enough of that, but not me. I'm having to hear the full force of it. It's a hefty cough, so that's a nice strong pair of lungs you've got on you there.
That was very much right. When I just took a sip of the coffee, as I said it before, and it went, just as you said it, it just went right down the throat indeed. And I was just about to spew it all over my PC screen, microphone, rig, everything. And I just thought, no, don't do that. Keep it in.
Hold firm, hold strong.
Stay inside. That's like a spotter in an oval race. Inside. And yes, indeed, it did stay inside, luckily. But I think I wasn't quite quick enough to hit the mute button in OBS, and thus I think you might have heard a bit of that, and I do apologize.
I'm sure everyone will forgive you, otherwise, if not, off to the gulag with you. But very well, Hassa, we'll forgive you this once.
Did you just say off to the gulag?
I'm not done.
Incredible. Incredible. The incredible Ed May, everyone, has just told me to get off to the gulag. As you can hear, we are properly enjoying ourselves in the booth. I had a slight suspicion it would turn out this way, Edward. It's not the first time, and I have a creeping suspicion that it mightn't be the last as well. We get this sort of vibe.
I'm not going to be safe from you, my Hassa.
It might be up to Ian to separate the two of us if he wants a little bit more professionalism in his broadcast, but we'll have to see. But in the end, you gotta outweigh the things as well, and I do honestly believe that it's also important for us to have fun in the booth, because it's gonna translate to what you people out there are watching along on, and hopefully it's gonna make it all that little bit more heartwarming to watch. As I've mentioned before, it's very nice having you all along. A very good morning to those of you that have just been joining us, to those of you who are just getting your legs out of bed and pushing aside to see the glory of day outside the windows. At least if you're in Europe. If you're anywhere else in the world, and it's dark, I apologize for my for my expecting of you to be where I am in the world, because I am enjoying a bit of daylight on the outside, and it even seems to me like the sun is actually peeking, which isn't happening all too much in Denmark in the month of December, so that is a very nice thing to have indeed. And we're just gonna see here the A11 car squeezes around the outside of the GTE leader, seems to be controlled enough. There's a hefty bit of traffic here as well, with a bit of tire smoke. It's the number 10 GT that's in 3rd place. It's the Simracersworld GT Mercedes there on the outside as well in 5th place. And I think in the end they're all safely going to navigate it afterward.
Extra damage as well on the front of that Simracersworld Esports car, so I'm not entirely sure what has happened there, Hassa. But that car is not looking in the state that it used to be, so unfortunately it seems that Matthew Sufi might have picked up a little bit extra damage on the front of the car, and in these GT3 cars, especially in the Audi, the engine is at the front. That could be impacting their straight line performance to a severe degree. I'm trying to keep an eye on the times, and their last lap time was a 2 minute 11.3, losing time to Morgan Thompson ahead that did a 2 minute 8.42.
Yeah, that's I'm not quite sure when that happened, because it's true that it's not something they had last time around. Last time we saw him, the Project Black car ahead is now coming out the pits and still well clear of the Simracersworld car, who seems to be like Robinson Crusoe at the moment on an island.
In their own little bubble, yes, Hasser at the moment is Morgan Thompson too far ahead of the car in front, or too far ahead of the car behind, and not too close enough to the car in front. So in their own isolated bubble, which is the in thing to do right now, apparently it's what all the kids are doing. So he's keeping up with the times, which is always good to see, staying safe in his own little personal social distance bubble. Driver that's trying to avoid social distancing, though, is Lucas Maruk. He's trying to catch up to the cars in front, trying to keep up with Matthew Briggs. The gap, though, is 25 seconds now between .exe Esports and Digital Apex Racing. The fight for 3rd place was heating up at one point, but has now seemingly begun to cool off, Hasser, and I think it's just the difference between the drivers getting in the car and when they're able to get their pace, if they get their pace on out, or if they just get it from managing the tyres, managing the fuel, and then catching that time back up in the pit lane.
Yeah, very much so. I just want to mention upon something else that I feel is worth mentioning upon. But in the end, what isn't worth mentioning upon when you got this amount of time to be letting the mouth run around. But anyways, we had a few mentions in chat last night about the amount of spectators at the race here, and that they were packed a little closely there in on the grandstands. Now, I promised that I would go out there and have a word of seriousness with them, and tell them to all to go home and watch the stream instead. So of course I'm counting on some insane viewing figures up there in the hundreds of thousands, of course. But I'm just gonna see if we can hop onto our bit of a scenic cam here to see maybe if we can get a picture of those very people, or the lack of them. But it doesn't really seem like it wants to show us too much of it at the moment. We might get a peek here and there. I was hoping for the scenic cams to just take us right on to an empty grandstand, because but I think I'm quite sure that the audience has indeed taken my advice, and they have so to say left the building. A lot of Elvises has indeed left the building, and we're now watching something that is a little more akin to what we're used to seeing these days, the new normal.
Exactly. It's very, very sensible of you as well, Hazza, to tell all of these people to go home and stay safe indoors watching the stream. Well, I hope everyone home is enjoying the stream we've been putting on for you. We've still got an extra few hours to go yet in this race, so there's plenty of time for more action to develop. And speaking of action, Lucas Brook is actually catching back up to Matthew Briggs. So I said that the gap is kind of staying where it is at the 25-second mark. It's now, though, down to 21 seconds over the course of just this one lap. It seems that Lucas is gaining 3 seconds per lap, which is, well, a dramatic loss of time for Matthew Briggs. I'm not sure what's been happening. Maybe he's got old tyres and is having to nurse the car through, which is why he's losing pace. Maybe it's something to do with the fuel. Obviously, we do know that the Ford GTE is rather economical on its fuel, and that could be playing into effect. It's going to have a heavier car for longer just due to how long the fuel takes to burn through. And the Digital Apex racing car, the nice, what we called the sort of the purple raccoon, but it's now sort of the kaleidoscope, the Technicolor raccoon, doing a good job holding on for third place currently.
The Technicolor raccoon indeed, but they seem to be stricken, Edward. They had very good pace earlier in the race. They seem to be very much on the competitive side of things, and maybe some of the damage they've picked up along the way have been getting to the car in a way that we're not quite seeing maybe from the outside, because it seems to have been relatively benign, but it could just be that it's actually affecting them in a rather detrimental manner, because they haven't really been on the pace that we saw earlier from them for some time. They could also just have chosen to change strategies all along and to play to the economical strength of the Ford GT, and maybe try to save some fuel and extend the stints, just knowing that it's the best way to go for them. If they can spare themselves a pit stop in the end, it's a lot of time to gain indeed, but 3 seconds a lap certainly wouldn't cut it. It could be traffic as well. We'll see what kind of lap time we're looking at across the line. This time the gap is 18.5 seconds. The lap time was a 2:05.24 for Matthew Briggs, which is faster than Lucas Marouk did on his last lap, but he's coming across the line in a moment, so we'll see the lap time this time around for Digital Apex Racing at 2:03 dead. So that gap is coming down, and it's coming down quickly indeed.
It really is. This is going to be very exciting. The two drivers did come into pit stops relatively recently, if I'm right, Hasse. So I think in the next sort of 5 to 10 laps, we could see some great on-track fighting. Adam Christodoulou, though, we are following at the moment, trying to get back up to the DSCDA Esports Silver Cup. Not quite able to manage it just yet, and there's actually a replay of an incident that saw him spin around, unfortunately, and we've been seeing that a little bit often in this Mercedes car. It seems to be set up quite loose on the rear, and it's really been a bit of a plague for the Project Dynamic 2 car.
It really has now. They're not Aussies, I know, but they'll be well familiar still with the sounds of Kylie Minogue, and I think it'll be playing on repeat for them as they're continuously losing the rear end time and time again. And a little bit surprising to see it happen to the Mercedes GT3 car, of course, front engine, rear wheel driven, so on the throttle you wouldn't be surprised to see it squiddle about with its rear end a little bit, but it certainly is not the car perhaps with the biggest reputation, you'd say, for being an oversteering machine. Quite the contrary, but of course setup can change many things to a car's dynamics, and it seems they've gone for a car that likes to rotate, and on a few occasions for Project Dynamic 2 here, the 218 car, it's been a little over-rotating. He has to go 3 wide here. Oh! And both the GTE and Christodoulou here in the 218 car having to take rather evasive action not to make contact, and they're all having a bit of a scary moment there, a bit of a wake-up call, but they'll be well awake now, that's for sure, with that 3 wide coming into the final sector.
Oh, absolutely. It is going to be keeping your eyes wide open. You'll be on stalks, I think, after a moment like that. Christodoulou then goes down the inside of a back marker. There goes down the inside of, I think that is the RE Racing Netherlands white car of Xander Kalk. If I am going to be 100% right on that, I'm not going to obviously take any money on that, but that's what I'm going to say was the car they passed there. We're going to come back, though, to focus on this GTE fight. Lucas Marouk trying to catch up to Matthew Briggs. The gap is closing down. It's 17.5 seconds. And it's all about just trying to get the clear air that he has at the moment and making the most of it when he gets it. We've been seeing time and time again drivers getting held up, drivers being slowed down, especially in the GTE field through this final sector and through the first sector, because it's, especially with the speed differential, it's not that large, and you can find yourself getting stuck because it is a one-line area of the track realistically, unless you have the extra downforce of the LMP2 car. It's not the easiest place to make any overtaking maneuvers.
It really isn't, and we've seen it time and time again. The final sector with this tight, twisty corners is really the section to go for it, but it seems to be swinging back on itself. So often the what's the outside for one corner then becomes the inside for the next one, and that gives us some really good situations and some really good fights. As we did see as well earlier with a couple of LMP2 cars getting very, very nifty as well in the final sector. Here is Lucas Maruk, who's still chasing Matthew Briggs. The last lap was presenting him with a gain of around about a second, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it's the same sort of figures this time around. The gap is still coming down. It's down to 16.2 seconds across the line. Here he goes, and the lap time was a 2:03.7 for him. So indeed, yet again, it's over a second of time that's being pulled back by the digital Apex racing car. As we can see, the track is really beginning to be lit up well by the sun, although a little bit of clouds covering the sky, and as such, it mightn't be the hottest of days here, even though we are, if I'm much not mistaken, virtually in Texas. But we'll have to see just how hot the track decides to become over the rest of the race here, and I think that's going to play a crucial role to the strategy of the teams here.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, Lucas Maruk's lap time was very quick at 2 minute 3.7, but to put that in perspective of what the leader of this class is doing, Oscar Wilkins did a 2 minute 1.87, so nearly 2 seconds faster than Lucas Maruk, who gained himself was about 1 and a bit seconds on Matthew Briggs. So Oscar Wilkins leading this race is doing an absolutely sterling job, it has to be said. We've not been able to focus on him much because, of course, the rest of the field have been, well, having their own little fights, and he's been doing such a good job that he's just clearing off and away in the lead of the race.
Yeah, they're having a real field day out there, aren't they, the 101 car, and it didn't really look to be that kind of race for them. Early days, they had some dramatic moments. Indeed, they had a bit of a contact with the backmarker car. They were sent sliding off into the walls, and you can still see the scars of that very incident on the rear end of that car. They also had a disconnect for David Plasman when he was in, which cost them quite a bit of time and a tow, which only goes to make you think about what kind of gap they would be sitting on if they hadn't had that incident, because that would be at least 3 more minutes in the bank for them, I think, and they'd be leading by a even wider margin. Oscar Wilkins, by the way, staying in the car, so he's been putting in some very long stints over the course of the night as well. It seems to be that a lot of the drivers have indeed been triple stinting, and 3 hours in the car, which certainly isn't a joke.
It really isn't. No, it's taking a lot of effort, as again, my iRacing is not wanting to play a ball. We're having technical issues all around the board here, sadly, on this broadcast. It's not been the easiest evening, as it has to, but we're going to soldier on, as we always do. We've been managing to keep on top of the SDK, managing to make sure that that's all up to date, and then my iRacing decides it's not wanting to work, but hey-ho, the racing's been great, hasn't it?
The racing's been really good indeed, but it's true that we've been plagued by some technical issues that seem to be quite the rarity for us. I was happy to say so far that on the broadcasting side, until today, my PC has had a perfect safety record. But maybe it was the thought of just thinking about saying it live on stream that caused my iRacing to freeze and crash not only once but actually twice. My internet, knock on wood, fingers crossed, spitting us across the shoulder, and no black cats and no walking under ladders and something with salt and all that stuff. But my internet, which is very Scandinavian, 300 connections, or same upload and download speed, at the moment limited by my rather old school Cat 5e cable that seems to be limited to 100 megabytes per second, which is still more than sufficient, you dare perhaps say. So the internet has been fine all the way along, but it's just been other issues that's been plaguing us, and it's been seemingly following us. Maybe the technical gods of modern technology not wanting us to have a problem-free broadcast number 100 here over the course of these 24 hours. But as Edward May so rightfully said a moment ago, we are indeed soldiering on, and not soldering on, although that's also an enjoyable action to partake in if you're in a need for a quiet moment. Get your old wirings out and getting fixed with the soldering iron.
I'm not sure if I would want to be soldering right now, though. I'd rather be watching this race, because this is something that's much more exciting. If I'm going to be 100% honest with you, although I'm sure it is a satisfying activity that you'll often do in your spare time. I don't have any of that equipment, but I'm finally getting back into the racing session, and we can now start to focus on the close fight in front and see the car of the Digital Apex Racing car closing up to .exe Esports and getting a fight on for the podium places here in GTE.
Very much so. They're continually closing that gap, and it's come down rather quickly. Look at that, Edward, the last lap for Matthew Briggs. This is getting me into the excited zone again, because the gap is down to 6 seconds, and that last lap for Matthew Briggs with a 2:09.68, and compare that to Lucas Marouk's last lap at 2:02.76. He'll be looking at the rear end of the car in front within the next lap or so. That difference in speed at the moment is something we rarely see. It's like the Matthew Briggs Porsche, or I'm sorry, Ford GT car here is in a different class at the moment, and not to the better.
Yeah, and Lucas Marouk is nothing if not consistent, because his lap time before that was a 2-minute 2.77, so he's done a 2-minute 2.77, and then the next lap afterwards done a 2-minute 2.76. So the Digital Apex Racing car is absolutely on it, like a car bonnet, and going to be trying to catch up to the rear bumper of Matthew Briggs very shortly. He's going to soon get into that slipstream, and I think when he gets there, the pace differential is going to be so big that it might be an almost effortless move, potentially, for the Digital Apex Racing car.
Yeah, I think what happened to Matthew there was he must have been held up in some of that GT3 traffic, which could be what's happening to Lucas Marouk right about now, because the gap is going the other way. He's behind the Audi GT3, currently sitting in 8th place in class, and he'll get the run here into the left-hander. He'll get past as well, very tight indeed, one of those tracks, I think, where you find yourself going down into first gear on more than one occasion, which is relatively rare. But indeed, Marouk getting past, and it's 8.5 seconds up now, so he did lose 2 seconds behind the lap cars there, and so I think we have our explanation as to why the .exe car lost so much time as well, and of course it is better to lose a few seconds on a lap than to be too aggressive, to have an accident, and to lose many minutes in the pit, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I'm having, again, some slight connection issues, Hassa, so I'm trying to solve it. In fact, no, here we go. We're getting into the time where I'm going to connect to the session, and finally, iRacing's playing ball. I'm going to be absolutely loving the time when I can get good internet, when I can get a good PC, and I can finally get these technical issues behind me, and we can focus more on the racing that we're able to do now, because Lucas Marouk, I think, is able to get through the traffic and now get some clear air, Hassa.
Yeah, Lucas Marouk has indeed cleared the impeding traffic, but the last lap there for the .exe certainly not off the pace in the same way as we saw before. It's now less than a second of a pace difference, and there's more traffic here for Briggs. I think that's the leading GT3 machine, still looking fresh and dandy indeed up ahead. And indeed, it is the 216 car of Robin van Brenk. It's the DSCDA Esports silver car, who, to be fair on them, they have not been putting a foot wrong so far in this race. They have been doing absolutely brilliantly, and it's very fair to them that they are at this late moment of the race still leading. Late, I say, with still a few hours remaining, but it's certainly closing in on the final bits of this race, as we are just a minute away from the 18-hour mark of this 24-hour race. And anyone who could just do a little bit of head maths will surely be able to figure out that that's 6 hours of the race remaining. That's just a fourth of the race remaining as well. Oh, a bit of blinking on my end there as well. I think that was let us not mention anything network related, at least not to the positive side, as the Ferrari of the Roaring Chicken Nuggets really picks up a bit of curb there and takes a spinner, and it's Robin De Becker who's having this problem. Of course, not Shane Van Gisbergen, apart from what the graphic tells you. He's the driver just getting past on the left-hand side there. That's a big old chunk of the, well, it's not even sausage curbs though there in the in this flowing first sector. It's more akin to
kind of spikes. Toblerones.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Toblerone, but a very short. It's like a one piece of Toblerone that'll be right there to chop off the car if you come across it indeed.
Exactly, yeah, sir, and he's managing to avoid the dreaded one-piece Toblerone curve and keep himself on the straight and narrow. And yes, Shane Van Gisbergen now behind the wheel and in taking control of the lead of the race ahead of the CXR Project Black car, who is actually on the same lap as SVG. So potentially all it takes is a little bit of an issue to plague the Apex Hunters United Esports LMP2 car, and there could potentially be a late drama change for the lead. But of course, knock on wood, we want to be seeing the fight on track, done on pure pace, as we see Matthias Karjalainen. He's been in the car for a lot this evening, hasn't he? So now this morning he's been carrying that PM Esports car all throughout this sort of late night, early evening stint.
Yeah, indeed he has. While we're back with Lucas Marouk here in that battle for third place in GTE, seems to constantly be gaining in terms of levels of spice, because they are indeed getting closer and closer. The gap's down to 3.5 seconds, and I'm afraid with this sort of pace difference that it's going to be over relatively quickly. It's been a long build-up, but I don't think Matthew Briggs is going to have too many chances of defending his current track position, with the pace advantage at the moment really favoring the Porsche 911 of Lucas Marouk and Digital Apex Racing. And the 117 car, who I have to say again, has been driving a really good, really steady and really consistent race across the board. It goes for all their drivers. We've hardly seen them involved in anything. Obviously they have been involved in some kind of calamities, because the cars picked up what I'd call for a GT Porsche minor damage, a little bit of a touch to the left side there in the rear, and perhaps a few scrapes here and there, but nothing serious.
Yeah, nothing a little bit of sticky tape won't fix. I'm very certain that they can get that done in the pits, get the panel beaters out and bash that car back into shape, and it'll be right as rain. It's, as you mentioned, not severe damage on the car. The most important bits of the car seem to be in good piece, which is obviously rear wing, rear diffuser as well seems to be in good stead, and as well the front splitter actually seemingly getting away with it, looking not too damaged as well. As we come now to Matthew Briggs, his car looks seemingly almost perfect, save for a little bit of a blemish on the left rear of the wing. It's a little bit knocked out of shape as well, with I think the rear diffuser's a bit knocked, but aside from that, car is looking lovely and pretty. Here the Technicolor Raccoon car having to worry a little bit though now about Lucas Marouk, who is now 1 second behind, and down this back stretch that gap is going to close down. The slipstream is going to be working to good effect, and the Digital Apex Racing car will be closing up into the braking zone, and it's going to be through this sort of third sector where we see the Porsche really start to come into its own. It's set up so well to take these corners and take the corners with much more speed than it seems Matthew Briggs is able to do.
Yeah, Lucas Maruk is flying through here, and the Porsche 911 seems poised on a very different level as the Ford GT misses the apex here in the slow final sector. Got a question from Carsten regarding our favorite liveries, Ed, and I'm gonna let you start with it as we're on board with Lucas Maruk enjoying the battle. And actually, perhaps we should just wait for a minute or two while we have this battle going on here, because I have a slight suspicion that in not too long we're gonna see the move coming up here from Lucas Maruk, because he's now right on the tail of Matthew Briggs. And as I've mentioned before, the pace difference seems to be enough that Matthew Briggs is going to have a hard time defending his position. But at this point now, less than 6 hours of the race remaining, he's going to want to impede the 117 car as much as he can possibly get away with, without, of course, getting either a penalty or any sort of collision between the two cars. So within the limits, of course, within the limits of reason. But Matthew Briggs has shown today that he is a cool, calm, and collected driver. He's got good racecraft. He's got good consistency as well, and I think he'll be in a good position to maybe just hold off for as long as possible. Mind you, there's a little bit of third air still, even with the GTE cars. It's of course not as prominent as you'll find in the higher downforce machines. As you can see, there's a huge difference to the line they're taking though into that turn. A much later apex from Lucas Maruk in the Porsche, and I think that really aids his exit. Coming out the corner, he's now right under the wing of the Ford GT. He might be close enough coming into the braking zone here in the left-hander next. We've seen him very strong on the brakes in the Porsche 911. Set up well, but it's not going to be this time around. He's still biding his time. He's waiting, watching, and I think watching every move of the car in front. And at this point of the race, what you want to do is also just try to just screen your opponent, if you will, and analyze the lines through the different corners, and just make sure that where you put in the move, you're going to be able to pull it off without losing too much time and without getting any sort of crazy situations up. And then they'll leave the true scent for the final minutes of the race, because indeed you're not going to last long if you keep sending it like it's a 24-minute race for 24 hours. Anyway, Matthew Briggs is still holding on here, and although the gap is just a few meters, he's somehow managing to defend here, Ed.
Yeah, I think turn one, you see yet again Matthew Briggs taking the defensive line, getting to the apex right away, but then Lucas Maruk tries to get the cutback around what's going to be the outside and is not able to get alongside, not able to keep the overlap, so has to back out of it and wait yet again for his time to strike. Coming through now the first sweeping sector of this circuit, a lovely bit of track that demands a lot from the drivers. You need to be on your absolute A game. Now that they're in the light, of course, they can see the apexes. It was a much more tricky affair, as we say, going throughout the night. And then you've got the blind left-hander here. Lucas Maruk gets a bit caught out by that, and gets a bit caught out by, I think that was the Apex Hunters United car. Leader of the race, Shane van Gisbergen, I think, might be coming on through the field. Get this involved a little bit in the fight, upsets the likes of Lucas Maruk's line through that corner, and means that Matthew Briggs has a little bit more breathing space coming on to this back stretch of circuit. And now it seems that Lucas Maruk has got his car set up a bit more for the corners, because down the straights he's not quite able to catch up to Matthew Briggs. But through this sector now, we see that his car is much more planted and able just to get right up to the rear bumper of the Ford GTE in front of him.
Yeah, indeed. So don't worry, Carsten, we've certainly not forgotten about your request to hear our opinions on our favorite liveries, but we've still got a sizzling hot battle here for podium places as well in the GTE class, as the number 10 LP2 just squeezes by there, safely so as well. And yet again, a slight apex miss there from Matthew Briggs allows the Porsche behind to get very, very close, and Lucas Maruk certainly he seems to be on the patient side as well, which is of course the
sorry,
European. What's happening?
I've just noticed that Avex Shane van Gisbergen has set the fastest lap of this race. He's done a 1:51.6, a purple lap time, and that is going to be the fastest lap of this race. I'm not sure why we're surprised that it's going to be SVG to take the lap time. It's in happy. It gets very close to one of the GTEs. I think that might have been Martin the Zoo in the Irish Netherlands orange car. So a bit of a heart and mouth moment for the driver in 5th position in class, managing to avoid or managing to have Shane van Gisbergen give him enough space, nothing more, nothing less, but judging it to perfection there through the S's.
Indeed, you could just see just how much Shane van Gisbergen was just on it there. He's had plenty of time to get into his groove, and it's a funky groove indeed. I remember, I reckon it's something in the style of Cool and the Gang, or maybe Tower of Power or something like that, going on in the car at the moment, because he was pretty cool and upbeat about it as he moved along. I was like, oh, I'm gonna take my chances here, and he's squeezing in along and doing a brilliant job. He doesn't need to at the moment, but often, of course, just going along at your natural pace, at your sort of natural rhythm, if you will, is often the safest thing to do, because if you change and try to go slower, at least try to be more careful, often what you find ending up with is a lot of heartbreak from just being in a little bit of a squiddly situation here, as Matthew Briggs find himself with the LMP2. I think that's the 14 car coming by. They're up into 4th place. It's the Team DRC orange car, currently driven by Falco Veerkamp. And as such, yet again, Lucas Marouk is on the tail of the car ahead, and they're into the 205s now, more or less, so the pace seems to be relatively steady. It's more a case of Matthew Briggs picking it up, it seems, than it's Lucas Marouk falling behind at the moment.
Yeah, he's just having to bide his time, realistically. I think he needs to pick his opportune moment. He just has the car set up for areas where he can't benefit, because you need to be in clear air to really get the full effect of his setup, and then down the straights where he's able to make the moves the easiest, really. It's easiest to get the passes done under the slipstream, under braking. His car isn't realistically that strong, so unfortunately he's having to sort of sit a little bit by the wayside, and it's starting to frustrate, I think, the Digital Apex Racing driver, because he knows that he's got the faster car beneath him. He knows he's the quicker of the two drivers on track at this very moment in time, but all of this waiting behind is not doing his tyres any good. It's not doing his race plan any good, because he was hoping, I think, banking on getting ahead of Matthew Briggs, and maybe then starting to get clear air, and through the next sort of few hours remaining in the race, maybe put some pressure on Mateusz Dewczuk up ahead. But at the moment, Lewis Mark's just having to wait and bide his time, and it's not fun, is it, Hasso, if you're in the car, you're waiting for the move to sort of make itself available, but there's nothing going at the moment. So I think maybe it might be up to Lucas to try and force the issue a little bit, maybe put Matthew Briggs under a bit more pressure.
Indeed, but he's in a situation where he really doesn't want to take any risks whatsoever at this point of the race, because it's a lot easier to lose it all than it is to gain a little, and that's something you have to keep in mind. But Lucas Marouk is certainly within striking distance, that's to say the very least. If you're wondering, can we see some other battles going on? Yes, we certainly could if there were any, but at the current time there really isn't. The closest other two cars are just over 20 seconds from one another here, as the GT Ford goes very, very deep into turn one, almost causes a problem there for Lucas Marouk. He's not going to be happy in this situation, and it's getting evident here, I think, that Matthew Briggs is really pushing. He's really trying to get every single bit of car, or every single bit of pace out the car, is what I meant to say. And in turn, he seems to be beginning to struggle ever so slightly, and it Lucas Maruk was on the outside as he went deep there, so there was no chance to go around, and I think he'll be a little bit annoyed about that, because had he held off, he might have been able to just squeeze on through on the inside.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned, I think the frustration could be starting to settle in for the Digital Apex Racing car, so maybe it might be best if he just holds off a little bit, tries to wait a little bit more, maybe take it a bit easier on his tyres, get them cooled down, and then try and make a charge, because at the moment you can see the car as well is tending to have a bit of an understeer. It's not seemingly having the grip that it used to do, which is probably caused by the tyres heating up, having to use a bit more of the mechanical grip following the dirty air of the car in front. Is, the tyres, as Shane Van Gisbergen sets another purple lap timer at 151.51. This is, well, nothing short of a masterclass, really, isn't it, from SVG, winner of the Bathurst 1000 very recently, the great race himself, and the great racer doing a great job here in this race.
Oh, yeah, look at the poise of Shane Van Gisbergen here as we're on board. You can just see slicing like a Japanese chef wielding the sharpest of blades. It's an impressive sight indeed. We're gonna go back with the Maruk Bricks in the fight for third in GTE, because I had a feeling that we might be missing the move if we're gone for too long, but as we come back, the gap's ever so slightly extended yet again. Here's the second place car in GT3. That's the car of Adam Christo, and he's gonna want these two to just go past and up the road, please. Don't cause any troubles. I'm just trying to mind my own business here and trying to do my own race, and all of a sudden through comes a podium places fight in the class above within the final 6 hours of a race like this, and you sort of just know it's going to be heating up, don't you?
Yeah, you certainly do. As we see them having to, waiting their time, they're picking their moment. They're sitting behind Adam Christodoulou, and now as they exit the slow left-hander going out, we can see now Lucas Maruk, this is the closest he's been down this down this backstretch. Is he going to look to the inside? Is he going to have to wait his moment? I think this is his best chance to make the move stick. He's not going for it. He's going to try and go around the outside. That's not going to help him out, though, as we see down the inside, there goes Adam Christodoulou trying to take the pass back. So that's actually hampered Lucas Maruk something fierce, and given Matthew Briggs all the time he needs to try and get a gap going, try and keep himself in safe stead. And further back, you can see Oscar Wilkins now joining the fray. The class leader in GTE is going to be having his heart in his mouth, seeing these two cars fighting on track for position and realizing, oh my word, what are they doing, guys? Keep it clean, keep it safe, let me get through, let me just get through this in one piece, and then you can carry on your fighting later. But just for this moment, be chill.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that's the 46 LMP2 as well. As through goes the leading GTE of Oscar Wilkins. That's going to put a damper on the proceedings here, at least for a short moment, as Matthew Briggs indeed gets a breather. Speaking of the best looking liveries, well, now's the time. I think we're looking at one of them right now. This is one of my personal favorites, alongside, well, another one of them is right behind. Oh, it's the 77, by the way, so I was indeed a little bit wrong there. But this machine as well, certainly great looking and in great detail as well. The Sim Controls Volante Esports car, and a livery we've come to know in other series here on SRW Esports, or SRW TV, I'm sorry, and very much a livery that we've come to love indeed. Now the gap grew very quickly there to a second and a half. We're gonna see how quickly Oscar Wilkins can get past on the .exe car now ahead of him, and to how big a degree Lucas Maruk is going to be able to take advantage of the situation up ahead now.
Yeah, it's all about, like you mentioned, just taking advantage, but it's not easy to do, is it? It's easier said than done. It's easy for us in the comms box to say, oh yes, he just needs to take advantage, or he just needs to do this, that, and get the stars, the planets aligning for him, but it's a different thing when you're in the car. Sometimes you can see the move getting made before you have a chance to really respond, before you have a chance to get up there. But now this is it. This is down the inside. Oscar Wilkins, he's put the Ford offline, but Lucas Brooke had to back out of it. He was getting too close to colliding potentially with the back end of Matthew Briggs, but then again, Lucas Marouk, when he gets up behind the Ford in front, he's being very cautious. In fact, sometimes I think he might be overly cautious, so that could be telling me that he might be content to sit behind and just save a bit of fuel and get past on strategy as he gets...
That's not overly cautious to me, Edward. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but that was a big send on the GT3 to get along the fork there with it. It just manages. That was close indeed, and I do apologize my emotional expression there. That was maybe the kind of feeling the GT3 driver had as well, to be honest.
I was worried you needed a doctor called for you or something. There was a strange noise coming from you, but I'm glad it was just the second-hand pain and panic for the GT3 driver seeing a GT come barreling towards the mass. It was very scary, as you alluded to with your lovely noise. And now we can see that it is Lucas Brooke. It's difficult, Hassa, because we know that Lucas Brooke has the pace at the moment. He's going for the move now, actually. He's going to be going around the outside, but then he's not able to get the move stick. They're going to be going side by side. I was going to say it's difficult for Lucas Brooke to get the move to stick, but now this is it. He's fully committing, and he's gone around the outside and managed to get it done. So me and my big mouth, the second I was going to mention something, is worked out for him as he takes the wider line, but gets the good run out of the corner. Matthew Briggs has dropped back 6/10. You're going to see a replay exactly of what happens here, Hassa. Around the outside, I thought that Lucas Merrick was going to lose out, but it seems he just had such a good drive out of the corner, didn't get any wheel spin, and was able just to carry the momentum ahead of Matthew Briggs into the braking zone.
Yeah, indeed, and through the left-hand kink there, I believe the Ford just had to lift off that slight bit as well, and it was done and dusted for Matthew Briggs. He could do no more, and he's lost third place to Lucas Marouk. Dennis Lynn mentioning that Shane neither hasn't found the apex in T1 yet. So I think I suspect a running joke within the Apex Hunters United Esports LMP2 team as he comes through turn one. Very much hits the apex there. You can see that little bit of a bump. Or was that even turn one? I'm sorry. I believe I'm very much wrong this time around, because this doesn't to me look like turn one. This looks like the final sector.
You wrong, Hassan. Never. I can't believe this. This is very uncharacteristic from you. So, no, we're seeing Shane van Gisbergen now coming through the final sector, and it's just going to be another purple lap time from the New Zealand driver. I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the timing screens to see if he's going to be able to set another blistering lap time. And even when he's been missing the apexes, he's now, there we go, he's not quite improved, so he needs to hunt for a few more. Does the Apex Hunters driver, he needs to get a sight set on the apex, especially through turn one, and then carry that good run throughout the rest of the lap and try and get himself into the 51.4s potentially. I think that's probably his target, to try and get a little bit faster and really consolidate the fastest lap of this race.
Indeed. Then it tells us it's not a joke anymore. It's now very real indeed. And by the way, good morning to Porsche Sport. Good morning to Dutch Kart Racer, and to the bossman Ian Roots, who's with us in chat as well. Good morning to everyone else as well, watching on both YouTube, on Twitch, and on our Facebook page. And if you like what we're doing at the moment here on Simracersworld TV, why not hit that thumbs up button? And if you want to see more, subscribe to Simracersworld TV, and you know there'll be plenty of great sim racing action on display, as Lucas Marouk now finds himself in third place in class, having finally found his way through on Matthew Briggs. And it was indeed a long time coming, but a change was gonna come, a change for position it was indeed, and it was podium places, and Lucas Marouk pitting in now with just a little bit of bad luck here. He might find himself or his teammate having to do it all over again. And yes, indeed, Dennis, well heard. I tried to conceal it the best I can. At least it's not too bad of Valby English, but a nice linguistical spot nonetheless. Danish, I am. Matthew Briggs in the picture, and we'll see if he's gonna pit soon. If he is gonna sneak on by, and indeed, Carsten, I will check Apex Hunters on Instagram very shortly indeed. I'd say it's a joke I cannot wait to get filled in on.
Yeah, exactly. I might give that a little look when we get to go to a break in, well, it might be in I think essentially a little while, but for the moment we're going to keep our eyes set firmly on the .exe esports car, and when we see them coming to the pits, we're going to try and figure out exactly what this battle is looking like, because at the moment the Digital Apex racing car has been swapped over. There's been a driver change, and it's now Andy Flint behind the wheel, a driver that I've not actually seen get into the car this race so far, so I'm not sure if you are to pick up on that, but I think at least in our time in the broadcast booth, this is the first time Andy Flint has been behind the wheel of the Digital Apex racing car.
It is. It's not a driver that I recall having seen in. So it could be that they've got Andy Flint in to take his major share of work in the final 6 hours here, and it's not something strange in that sense. Could also be that sometimes people's real life schedules don't really allow them to drive at all times of day or night, be it. And Andy Flint is indeed in the car. I'm afraid due to my several resets of our timing software, I'm not going to be able to see just how many laps he's put in, but it seems you are indeed correct, and welcome to Andy Flint as well. He's chasing Matthew Briggs. He's about a minute off, which I tend to find a relatively short amount of time, given that they were in for a full fuel tires and a driver swap as well.
Yeah, exactly. So Andy Flint is in a good position to catch up to the .exe esports car and keep ahead of him when we get to the pit stop phase, as number 3 car of SVG comes on through past Matthew Briggs. Still leading the race is SVG with a nice healthy margin. I want to see what exactly that gap is at the front, but I'm almost certain that it's going to be far too big and shrink my ego down even smaller than it already is. It's probably microscopic at this point when I was in all of these drivers putting in the performances that I could only dream of doing, Hasse.
Yeah, sometimes when watching fields that are strong as this is, at least the top position fights, it can make the very good look merely average, which is what you usually say about, for instance, the Formula 1 grades. It goes to be very true for the level of talent that we've got on display here tonight. And I think our leading car in LMP2 is it's a very good example of just that. Now, I'm afraid we've had a problem here for Paul Searle, who's, by the way, sitting second in the 46 car here in LMP2. Never mind the graphics telling you it's Matthew Briggs. It's not. There's contact between the 46 and the 116, though, in that situation. Although I don't think it's going to cause too much damage to either car. And I'll make sure we have a quick reset of the graphics, because I'm well aware that every time I go onto a replay, it freezes on what's happening there, and the names, and so on, which is, rather annoying. And just as I say that, we're gonna have to go on to another replay because we've had a problem here for Adam Christo.
Yeah, seeing exactly what happens. He pulls to a stop immediately, and then is he going to tow into the pits? He is. This is a weird one. He's not pulling into the pits. So what is going on? That could be potentially a hardware issue. Maybe he's had to do a quick soft reset. Maybe some software's been bugging up and plaguing him, or maybe he just got a call in his ear from someone telling him to get off the ring. You've been spending too much time on there, and who knows.
Oh, I'm not quite sure. I think the hardware issue is a very, very, very plausible cause of it, and it did seem like the frame of time where you could let a kind of stick out your arm, pull out a USB cable, and just power it back into the PC quickly, and hope for it to just connect instantly and go on. I'd say I've heard about drivers needing to do things like that to correct a bit of a hardware problem in the middle of the race. It's not going to impede them too much, by the way. Here's Matthias Karjalainen, and he is really closing up on the driver up ahead, who is, by the way, Charles Verhoek. And Charles Verhoek, just 2.5 seconds up the road. It's actually interesting because there's also only a further 20 seconds from, and that's from Verhoek, by the way, down to Michael Schieber here in the 4 Elements Racing Team Red Black, and I believe it is the red car. It seems rather red to me, and there's a 4 Elements Racing Team called Red Blue as well. That's blue, so we'll take it. This is the red car. The other one is the blue car. Just going by Occam's razor here, the most probable explanation, and we're getting all philosophical. But yes, indeed. Let's just if I'm wrong, do get at me. But I will take this on me. I'll risk it with this one. Anyway, Charles Verhoek is 2.5 seconds up the road from Matthias Karjalainen. That's in the battle for 6th place as well in LMP2. And let's just give ourselves the best possible viewpoint of a battle like this. And that'll be on board from Mr. Karjalainen here, the Finn.
Oh. And it's Detective Hasselroma in the booth, of course, figuring out which Team 4 Elements car is which, getting his colours right, as always. He's displaying knowledge, as always, knowing what cars are which. So this is why we have him here in the booth, because it's invaluable knowledge.
You're treading deep water there, Mr. May, I have to tell you. And, well, just have to make sure that you can swim. Still on board with Karjalainen, as the car ahead is doing a very good job of negotiating the traffic at hand, and he's putting the pressure at the moment onto Karjalainen in terms of wanting to keep up. You can see just a slight moment of counter steering there, as he has to put in a little bit of opposite luck here into the final corner. A good place to send it for the LMP2s. It seems to want to really rotate on the throttle, and he's working the wheel in order to balance the car, doing just that. You're coming up the hill, up into turn 1, and it's so difficult there across the crest, and then you have to turn in late, and you can just see why you'd be prone to missing that apex, not just once or twice, but many, many times indeed. Because when you have an apex like that, if you're just slightly late on the brakes, you'll find the car just plowing on ahead, not turning in at all. Now, through this first sector, and oh, we've seen so many people do just that. I've rarely seen an example of the curse of the commentator. Maybe not the hardest strike, if you will, by the famous curse. But I was just about to mention, we've seen those inside Toblerone chunks be rather dangerous indeed. And just as I was about to say that, Matthias Karjalainen chooses to go across one of them and give us a very fine example indeed, and also a very fine example of some of that Finnish rally driving car control there.
Exactly, yeah. So I think I have someone in the interview waiting room to have a chat with us, and I think if we can have a look to the class leaders in GTEs, we have teammate of Oscar Wilkins, the driver for Sim Controls X Volante Esports, in the booth, and it is Daniel Nestorovic, if I've pronounced that right. I've probably horribly butchered that, and apologies if I have, Daniel, but good to have you here with us in the booth. And how's the race been going for you? It seems to be going well through the night. Of course, we didn't have anyone on the comms, but still, I think you let your driving do all of the talking there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and the name, you made that pretty well, I must say. I'm pleased. That's good. No, this has been a roller coaster for sure for us. As you know, we started off with David Pullman, or Plasman, sorry, in P1 and all that, and then his computer died. You know that, and yeah, so we had to tow the car, and to be in the lead now is amazing. But it's a nice team effort.
You're not just in the lead, you're absolutely dominating the class, aren't you? You're about 6.5 seconds up the road from your nearest rival in the Team DRC red car. So what's your secret? Has it just been putting the practice in beforehand, getting the car in the state it is, or has it just been avoiding sort of the incidents?
I wish I could say avoiding the incidents. No, because I really think we've been quite unlucky. Definitely, there's been a lot of practice, but I think, as far as I know, this team, like Volante Racing, we are pretty established already. It's a young team, but the drivers, we have some experience, and we're a good match, and we have a good collaboration together, and we know how to drive it. So I guess that helps a lot.
Well, you certainly seem to know exactly how to handle this Porsche RSR. And how's it been in this car? How does it compare? Was it always going to be the Porsche for you guys this race, or has it been something that you had to think about a bit more?
It was a very fast decision. The BMW was the first choice, actually, and very quickly we shifted to the RSR.
What was it about the RSL that drew you towards it? Is it just some particular handling characteristics, or is it just your vibe? You felt
cornering. The cornering is really good in this car. The top speed isn't amazing. The acceleration isn't that amazing, especially not compared to the Ferrari. But I think the cornering is really good in it. And overall, like it has an overall good package. You know?
Yeah, I can see what you mean. I often drive the GTEs when I'm in, at least the RSR when I'm driving GTEs. So I can certainly know what you mean when it's all about the feel of the car, and especially under the brakes, I find that it's much better. And I'm sure you'll probably echo that sentiment, Daniel. And is that something that you're going to be looking forward to as you get? I think you're coming in for how many more stints? Is it just one last stint for you?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a double stint now, and then after Oscar here, and then Oscar's gonna finish it probably.
Okay, well, good to know, and we'll be wishing you all the best for your final double of the race, and let's hope that you can make it a good one, Daniel. But before we say goodbye, is there anyone you want to give a quick shout out to here on Simracersworld TV?
Well, you guys, definitely. It's an awesome event to be in this, and I feel it's like pretty much Dutch. You don't sound Dutch though, but and usually race in the Danish leagues, you know. So it's nice to be here with the Dutch guys and see the environment and the enthusiasm for sim racing here. That's pretty cool. And of course, Volante Racing and Carsten, our team manager, Carter, really cool.
Well, thank you very much, Daniel. All the best, and we'll hope to see you boys finishing well come the end of this race. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
So that was Daniel there in the Sim Controls X Volante Esports car. Going to be getting in very shortly, taking over from Oscar Wilkins, as he did mention there, for his final double, and then handing over to Oscar for the end of the race, Hasser. And it's good to have a chat to some of these drivers. Good to get insight as well about all the decisions they make before the race, all of the things, the factors that can influence the car choice.
Yeah, very much so. It's always nice to get inside the head of the drivers, and a very nice and thorough interview there from Daniel, really giving us a piece of his mind about a few things concerning this race, and nice to hear from the leading GTE team as well, to hear that they are indeed an experienced team. I think that absolutely shows on the way they've been approaching this race, and the way they've also been managing to keep up spirits even when the going has been tough, because as Daniel indeed says, they have had their fair share of troubles earlier on with a disconnect and also a relatively large incident for himself when he was having a light contact with a GT car that led to a rather large crash. But they've managed, and they've managed rather well, to be honest, because they're leading class by a 6.5 minute margin now.
Absolutely, yeah. The margins are starting to increase actually across the entirety of the GTE field, because then the gap to Dan van der Ven in the Team DRC red car back to Matthew Briggs is around about 4 minutes. And there's an extra minute between third and fourth, and then 7 minutes from fourth till fifth. So field's starting to spread out a little bit. Unfortunately, we're not seeing too close on-track fighting. But then speaking of on-track fighting, actually, if we follow the car of Matthias Kajalainen up in front, you can see Jacques Verhoog in the Project Dynamic LMP2 car. Just a little bit up the road, you can see him ahead in the camera shot. So, well, as I was mentioning, Hasser, about there maybe not being too many on-track fights, I've been proven wrong, because we have one right here.
Yeah, indeed, it's still just 2.5 seconds separating the two, which means it's been status quo for quite some time between the 37 PM Esports LMP2 and the car ahead, which is the number 18 Project Dynamic car. And yeah, they've been going at it at a fair rate like this for 29 minutes or so. And it's at the moment by far the closest two cars on track, as we had a fair bit of separation between the third and fourth place GTEs that were providing us with such a good deal of entertainment not too long ago. Oh, as Karjalainen finds the corner exit, the best of places to sweep past the Audi on the outside. Normally, I'd say in the prototypes, not necessarily something I'd recommend, because you find that even GTEs, and especially the GT3s as well, they don't really have the grip under high-speed cornering that you do, and as such you'll find yourself sometimes surprised to see just how much of the track they actually need, because mind you, if you're going through a corner at sort of a peak velocity and maximizing, utilizing all the grip you have available for you in a GT car, you're going to be washing out wide at the exit once you get onto the throttle, and sometimes you're not really able to leave space on corner exit on the outside, and as such it can be a little bit dangerous. Matthias Karjalainen, of course, he knows what he's doing. He probably had it locked in, and it's a bit of an angle that might skewer things a little bit as well here. So in the end, what do I know? But just to say, it is something that I've seen quite a few incidents with in my time, both as a racer and a commentator. We have the 77 Next Level Racing LMP2 car pitting in at the moment, and that's the Roaring Chicken Nuggets getting lapped by the 37 car, as well as I'm afraid we've had some kind of issue here for Austin Foster.
Oh, good to see exactly what is happening. And oh, just over the curbing, the rear of the car sort of bottoms out and sends him around, spinning, unfortunately, for the 4 Elements Racing Team Blue. Does he rejoin safely? Just about the turning circles, very, very large for the LMP2 car. Gets out back on track nice and safely, however, Hasser, and seems to avoid too many more dramas aside from spinning all the way around.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so, and it's a small 180 in the grand scheme of things. However, it's not gonna matter too much, that's for sure. The only thing is if you clip that inside curbing enough to really damage the car, which I have to see. We've seen surprisingly few incidents involved in that. We did see one LMP2 going absolutely airborne and picking up engine damage as well as a result, and it's no real surprise, because the engine is indeed quite low on the back. So if you take a knock, it's right upon the bottom of the sump. I mean, it's anyways, the gap between those two cars, just as we were saying, it was closing in. It's really been extending back out, Edward. It's now up to around 5 seconds here.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. As soon as we mention something, as Mario Walker mentioned, we make prophecies that immediately turn out to be wrong. So it seems that is one of those such cases, Haas. So we've been saying, oh, it's closing up, this is going to be a great battle. And then immediately the gap is increased rather largely. And I think it's a good time, Haas, for us to go to a quick break. And hopefully by the time we come back, it'll have closed back up once more.
Yeah, very much so. Let's hop on board with the driver that we really want to see, if any. Shane van Gisbergen, our LMP2 leader, the fastest car on track at any point tonight, still holding the fastest lap, I believe. And what a drive it's been from SVG so far. So let's just go on board and enjoy 5 more minutes of that, while Ed and myself get ourselves stocked up on the things we need to keep you updated and running with what you need, which is more sim racing. So 5 minutes, we'll hop on board with the SVG and we will be right back. So don't go anywhere. And so we're back from a short break indeed. I just popped myself a soft drink to keep me going. No energy drink as such, but a nice little lemon and orange soda will get you a long way at this point. And I believe I still have Edward May with me, somewhere out there in the depths of the internet. Although it seems by now he's been swallowed up into the depths of the internet. And we shall see if he can swim or if he shall drown. And I might just have to do the final hour and 10 minutes here by myself, it seems. Well, jokes aside, Andy Flint in the digital Apex racing car, the 117 machine, has reclaimed third place after the turning of the pit stops. The gap down to Marius Breuer in the .exe car, the purple raccoon, if you will, is well, it's up to 22.6 seconds. Both of the drivers having had, or both of the cars having had driver switches. So indeed, that one's going to be one to watch towards the end of affairs. Currently, at least, Marius Breuer is the driver with the pace of the two here, and he's gaining. He was gaining quite a lot actually over the last lap. Could be down to traffic. He seems to be in pretty clean air at the moment, but a net gain of a second over the last lap, with only around 21 seconds up to the car ahead. That gap is gonna diminish quickly indeed, with just over 5 hours of racing still to go, Edward. And if Edward is speaking, he's still muted. And if Edward is not speaking, it means he's not here yet. And of course, fair play to him, because sometimes you gotta do what a human being has to do sometimes. And it could just be the course for
I'm back.
for
Hello.
Ed, and Ed has
Are you
returned.
stitching me up, Pastor? You better not be stitching me up.
Well, you're getting the rough treatment here indeed.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
No, don't worry about it, mate. As I was just saying, you were probably off for good reasons. Sometimes a human being has got to do what a human being has got to do here. As we're watching Jacques Verhoek, who's still got a battle going on, although they're not within real striking distance of one another, but they're close enough they can see each other through the traffic if they peak for long enough. Though, of course, that goes for Jacques and the Project Dynamic car up ahead. He probably doesn't want to do that because he's going to be looking quite hard in the mirror to spot Matthias Kajalainen in behind, and that would be a safety risk to himself and others as well. Kajalainen in the PM Esports 37 car has been fighting for so long here around 7th place, Edwin, and they seem to be losing a little, gaining a little, back and forth, and with the pit stops as well. I think their strategy is a little skewered to the other cars as well, and it's going to be interesting to see where they end up.
Yeah, it's been swaying, as you mentioned, left to right. It's just, I think Kajalainen has the pace. It's just, he seems to have a few little mistakes, a few little inconsistencies, as well as seemingly struggling a little bit more with the traffic, which is the reason why Verhoek is able just to keep the gap where it needs to be, around about this 5-second margin. But then you see that Kajalainen, he's got so much traffic to have to navigate. He's going around the outside of the GT3. He looks to the inside of the GTE that says, no, thank you, you are not going to make this pass. I'm going to have to make it much more harder for you. He manages now to sweep around the outside, get himself up through into some clear air, but all of that has cost just Kajalainen a little bit of time as they get a bit close, a little bit too close for comfort maybe, but now they are back, and someone is here in the interview waiting room, and I think I will have a quick little word if I can drag him in. Let me see if I can do that just now. In fact, Casa, I will drag in this man to have a word with you, because I see you're back unmuted, and you can have the honour of talking to Mr. David Plasman.
Well, hello, David. Thanks for joining us in the booth for a quick talk, and a pleasure to have you along. I'll quickly hop over to your car, which is, of course, the 101 machine, David. The the talk of the town on your behalf being that the PC crash early in the race. Any idea what happened there?
No, I really don't know. It's unbelievable. Such bad luck, and yeah, such a shame for my team because we were steady P1, P2, and qualifying was going really well. And then that happened out of the sudden. I saw everything disappearing around me, and I asked my teammate, "Okay, what is happening?" And they reacted very quick, luckily, and I was out of the car, of course. And then there was a small accident where we lost a lot of time with, and still in P1, it's unbelievable what the team is capable of. I'm really proud of the guys.
Yeah, because I'm thinking it has to be a little unexpected with the race start. You had to be in P1, and with that margin at this stage of the race, were you in any way expecting that to at all be a possibility after those problems you had earlier?
Yeah, of course. Oh, something went wrong. That was really close. Yeah. No, the qualify. I didn't expect to be at P1. I was expecting the first one of P2, P3, but because we went starting on the quali setup an hour before the race to adjust it, but we had a really good race setup. We knew that. Also with the tire temperature, so we knew in the race we can perform really well. And then put it in P1. It was such with 1/10 of a second. I was really surprised, and of course, really happy. And still after all those problems, I thought, maybe I think it's over now. And then I saw the guys back in P1, and it was it's crazy. Never expected this at all after all those incidents.
So Daniel told us that he'll be in for a double stint, and then most likely it'll be Oscar Wilkins who'll be finishing the race for you as well. Are you already planning on how you're going to celebrate what looks to be a race win, or how's your focus? Because I take it, in the end, you'll also want to be focusing on just getting the car across the line now. I don't think about how to celebrate it. Of course, I'm really proud of the teammates. I think I'm gonna finish it. I did a clean install on my PC. Everything should work. Is working fine now, and also because of the DC laps, of course. I still have to drive. So I have faith in my computer, and then we can finish the race. I can do the last 2 stints or so. We have to see. Well, we have faith in your computer as well. We'll have fingers crossed and hoping that it all works out. David, thanks for joining us for an interview here in the booth. And before we let you off the hook, is there anyone you want to give a thanks or a shout out to while we've got you in here?
Yeah, you guys, of course, for having 24 hours occupation and doing really good commentary. And of course, my teammates for having such a massive stints. All of them were driving really good, out of the problems. So big up to them.
Well, indeed, and thanks, as I said, for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you in, and best of luck, veel succes, as they say in the Netherlands, for your team for the rest of the race, mate.
Dankjewel. Bye.
Bye. So, another bit of a short word, you could say, with one of the drivers of the leading GTE car. What a nice, talkative bunch of lads they are, with Daniel Nestorovic now having taken over the car here.
It is. It's good to have these boys that they're enjoying the race so much that they want to be having a good talk and giving us a lot of things to think about as well in terms of how the team is able to really recover from a setback. And when the race seems to be at its bleakest, the guys have been able to really just carry on forward through all of the sort of the struggles that they have been having, of course, with David Plasman's DC. They're going to be crossing their fingers, toes, everything that they can possibly cross to make sure that he can get it across the line safely come the end of the race, as we see an Audi R8 facing the wrong direction. I'm not sure what was going on there, but hopefully they can rejoin at the track nice and safely sooner rather than later. Yes, we're going to see a replay now of exactly what happened, and it's just a spin around. Does Jarno Loretta get it away from the wall? Yes, he does. Radial Motorsport car, though, not in the best of shapes at the moment. It has to be said, doesn't it, Asa? And I think we're having a bit of hiccups with our SDK. It says we're having a break, but I don't think we are. I think we're still live and kicking at the moment as we follow Marius Breuer now, the .exe esport car. He's taken over from his teammates, and now he's going to have to set his sights on catching back up to Andy Flint in the Digital Apex racing car and try and stake his claim back on the podium positions.
Yeah, indeed. And luckily, that hiccup is only on your end and not on mine, which is what the people see. So you should have just kept your mouth closed about it. Just kidding, mate. Of course. It's all just good banter here, but it's very, very true that the battle is indeed heating up there, and it's now seems to be reversing itself back into what it was before, a battle between Digital Apex Racing and .exe for third place in GTE, and it's now Marius Breuer getting the run slowly but surely on Andy Flint up ahead. And last time we saw them, it was the Digital Apex car gaining and passing on the .exe machine. So they're looking to return the favor. They're looking to reclaim what I'm sure they'll think will rightfully be theirs, the podium place, the third place in this race at the moment.
Yeah, and have a look at the rear of Daniel Nestorovic now, and the Simracersworld, not the Simracersworld, this Andy Flint car, sorry, that's looking a bit. You can see that left rear is not looking too pretty, is it? It's not the nice usual RSR shape. It's a little bit sort of pushed up on the rear, a little bit of a nip and tuck potentially on the rear, but it's not a nice bit of cosmetic surgery, is it? It looks a little bit worse for wear. Hopefully it's not doing them too much damage. Well, it's certainly not damaging their pace, is it? Because what was their last lap time? Their last lap time was a 2-minute 4.74, although Marius Breuer did gain exactly a second on the last lap, so the Ford is now starting to come into its own a little bit in this stage of the race. Maybe the stints are starting to come back to the .exe esports car, and the race is ebbing and flowing in their favour. We're going to be keeping, though, our eyes on Andy Flint in the Digital Apex racing car, following him through as he has a little bit of traffic further up the road, but so does Marius Breuer, who has to navigate, and it's all about navigating the traffic in the best way possible and getting the drivers in at the right stage of the race when you know they might be encountering a lot of traffic in their stint. It's better to try and get some of your more experienced guys in this phase of the race to really sort of, I'm not going to say lift up the drivers that might not have the most experience, but give the team sort of a decent cushion, a decent margin, so that if the worst does happen, is that they'll still be in good stead.
Yeah, indeed. And in a race like this, you also have to consider the freshness of each driver. Sometimes it's just worth it to get a fresh driver, a rested driver in, who can bring something new, some energy to the table. Because, of course, especially after a tough, long night of driving like we've had tonight here, we're going to see some tired heads out there on track. And I think that might be one of the key factors of the final hours of the race as well. Speaking of the final hour, Ed, we're into our final hour of broadcasting, not as a channel, just you and I, of course. We're going to leave over to Jack Werrell and Jack Oliphant, the Jack Attack, in about an hour's time, and they're going to be right there. Another one ready to charge is the boss man himself. It's still no Bruce Springsteen. It is, however, Ian Roots in the 246 Simracers Esports Mercedes GT3 car. And I'm afraid, of course, since they already spent their fast repair, still with a rather large chunk of their front pushed into itself.
Yeah, and they did use, I think you mentioned the fast repair earlier on in the race, so they're going to be having to nurse this car all the way till the end, and it's not what you want to be having, is it? You've got still plenty of time to go in this race as we're coming up to what's going to be the 5-hour mark. In fact, I think we've just gone past the 5-hour mark, have we? Sorry, I can't quite see the timing right on my overlay, so I think I might be having some issues with SDK now. This time it's my turn to have some hiccups, but here we go, Hassa. We are getting into the last little stage of the race.
it is certainly heating up, and it's becoming more and more decisive. Whatever happens out there, there's going to be lesser and lesser time to actually make amends for it if you have any kind of problems. And as such, also be seeing most gaps around the field being relatively decisive by now, I want to say. But of course, that's not to say that there isn't anything to fight for, because Andy Flint is looking at a diminishing advantage over the .exe 110 machine of Marius Breyer, who's slowly but surely pegging him back in, and he's doing a very good job of it so far. He hasn't been in the car for too long, so we can expect Marius to put in, I think, at least a double stint here over the noon hours here. Anyway, we're all the way up to 10:30 Central European Time, 9:30 Greenwich Mean Time, of course. And time does indeed fly by quickly when you're enjoying yourself. And I always find myself surprised to see how fast these stints actually go once you get into the groove of it. But that's indeed, it's nice to have it that way, because it can also be a little tedious if you're looking at a long race where every single car is 3-4 minutes from one another, and as such it's all of a sudden being a little less filled with action. Action is something we still have, and I think there'll be plenty of it before we see the checkered flag for today.
Of course, Asta, there's going to be still loads to come in this race, so obviously you don't want to be going anywhere other than being right here on Simracersworld TV. And if you are enjoying the action on track, if you have been enjoying the work me and Hassa have been putting in to keep you all entertained this morning, shall I say, then it'd be very much appreciated if you could give the stream a little bit of a like, or whatever other button it is on whichever streaming platform you are watching. It's all greatly appreciated, and it'd be a great mark for our 100th race broadcast here on Simracersworld TV if you could make it extra special by just giving us a little bit of appreciation. So thank you very much if you've already done so, and if you've just done so, thank you very much as well.
Indeed, and even if you don't, well, thanks anyways for tuning in. It's our pleasure having you all along for what has been a very eventful race so far, joined by some absolute stars of the sport, not only sim racing, but the world of real-world motorsports, indeed, as well as the Apex Hunters, has taken their rifles along. They are in their camo clothing, they're sneaking along the wood line, and they're looking for prey.
They are absolutely the apex predators of this race, aren't they? They are really on the money. They've been faultless really as soon as they got into the lead. They've not really put a foot wrong, and that's shown by the gap that they have to their nearest competition, Peter Smith in the CXR Project Black car. 4 minutes the margin, near enough, 3 minutes 50 seconds. And then again, the CXR Project Black car is themselves 3.5 minutes to third place. So at the front of the field, it's all sort of starting to expand out a little bit, and then we start to see things close up a little bit between Freddie Scattini and that's Pepin Krajeveld further in front in the PM Esports car. We're seeing them now on track, just going around the outside of Ian Roots in the Simracersworld Esports GT3 machine. Look at how much he's also taking it through this flowing sector. It's going to be an absolute joy, I'd imagine, to be behind the wheel of an LMP2 car, especially at this COTA circuit. The downforce is really complemented by the sort of the creation of the track, all of the elevation, all of the dips and dives, all of the fast, high-speed corners. It's going to be an absolute joy to drive, I'm sure, Hassa.
Absolutely. So, and especially in the fast bits, because normally if you're in a GT car, and especially so in the GT3s, if you take Spa, for instance, if you compare a GT3 machine to an LMP2 or an LMP1 as well, it's in the end an experience that's very relatable between the two types of prototypes. But in corners, in the very fast corners like Eau Rouge Radillon or through Blanchemont and Spa, in the higher downforce cars, in the prototypes, it's often just flat, which is quite easy to deal with. It's not hard, not lifting, and just having to steer through, compared to having to lift just about the right amount, which you often find yourself having to do in the GT cars. And that's often also where the car gets much more unsettled, especially the mid-engine, the GT3 cars, the Audi, the Ferrari, and especially the McLaren, has an ill-conceived reputation for doing exactly that. So in many ways, it's a little counterintuitive. The LMP2 is probably more relaxing to drive in terms of predictability. Of course, there will be a lot more force going through the wheel, depending on the setup of the drivers, rigs and all. But for drivers who go for a realistic approach to having a direct drive wheel, this will be a handful indeed, and there's going to be quite a lot of weight behind what the car does. This LMP2 is also a car that likes to be driven very lightly as well. It responds quickly to the inputs, and as you can also see here on Pepin Kreiber, like, look at his front tires. You don't really see them moving all that much when he's turning into corners, and if we go on board, I believe we'll see the steering inputs are relatively small as well. Of course, through the very slow corners you need to put something in, but it is a car that likes to be driven softly, that's for sure. Oh, Adam Christodoulou, we're getting mentions in chat that there has been an incident with Adam Christodoulou and the 42 car.
Oh! Big impact there for the 218 car. He gets one hit, thinks he's safe, but then it seems that just the momentum of the that's the Roaring Chicken Nuggets car, the 142, the 488 GTE, just misjudging the braking zone, tries to send an overtaking move from far too far back, it has to be said, then tries to avoid it, but doesn't do anything aside from clattering into the rear of the Mercedes in front, and then tries to turn in, and it seems to just go back for a little bit extra. It's obviously not going to be intentional. He's just trying to keep out of the way, but doesn't expect the Mercedes to have the momentum in the direction it does to be reversing backwards. Obviously, contact did sadly put him in the firing line for a second time, so Adam Christodoulou is going to have to hope that his car's in good stead. If we can get an onboard shot maybe down the straight to see if he has any damage or not to his steering aspect. It did look like a hefty impact on the side of his car.
Yeah, it seems he's still running though fairly well, but yeah, I'm very much noting what Grizzy's also saying in chat, that there wasn't really the biggest of efforts in the situation to try and go around. It was a little bit suspect in that sense. Now, we're not gonna assume anything here from our safe seats in the booth. Of course, if we start assuming such things, we'll no longer be in a safe seat, of course. We'll be putting our behinds on the line very much. But leave it to the stewards to decide what they'll make of that action. But it didn't look too nice indeed, and yeah, it's a good question. Of course, you cannot really steer in that situation. It's a good call, and if you're trying to just slow down the car to avoid hitting, not steering often is the best idea. So it could indeed be it's just an incident, but even if it's just incidental, they could very well still be looking at a rather hefty penalty for that collision there, because it was rather unnecessary as well. Luckily, I'd say, for the Project Dynamic 2 car, Edward, they're looking at a 5-minute advantage over the iRacing Netherlands blue car, currently driven by Pascal Tigelaar.
Yeah, and another sort of saving grace, I suppose, is the fact that it wasn't the front of the car that was damaged. It was more sort of the rear bumper and the side, which doesn't usually affect the performance of the car, at least in iRacing, too much. Maybe if the rear diffuser has been buckled and bent, we might be seeing a bit of a performance loss through some of the higher speed corners. But for now, it seems to me that Adam Christodoulou has, I think, gotten away with it just about. But I'm certain that he's not going to be happy with the way that the Roaring Chicken Nuggets car did just sort of. It wasn't intentional, but it did just seem like he ploughed into him, and it's one of these unfortunate incidents. You do see it occasionally in racing. You never want to see it, but sadly, it's just a side effect of racing, is that you can occasionally get these incidents that, well, through no fault of his own, Aaron Christodoulou's chances of getting the race victory seem to be slipping away.
Yeah, indeed. It's certainly not what they were looking at. It's not going to help their pace, and it's not going to help their situation in any way whatsoever. However, we do have a driver waiting in the interview waiting room, and I'm going to pull him in to speak to you, Edward, because I know you've been secretly practicing a bit of Finnish here and there, and it is indeed a Finn we've got waiting in. It's Matthias Karjalainen, and he's waiting to talk rather swiftly to Edward May.
Hello, Matthias Karjalainen. Good to have you here in the booth.
Well, good morning. Good morning.
How's the race been going? It's been a race of ups and downs for you. We've been seeing you up in the mix, and we've been seeing you actually racing quite a lot for the time me and Hasse have been in the booth. Have you been doing a lot of the graveyard shift here?
Yeah, it was. We happened to change my shift from 10 yesterday. 10. It's 9 your time, I think. We decided to postpone my stint for another 2 hours, so Budawin would do that stint of mine, and then I did one stint from one stint in the middle of the night, and then I got this other stint, which went pretty well, I think, at the light. So I've been practicing a lot more in the light. So naturally, I got the better flow going.
As we see your teammate Pippian Krajovel just getting a little bit loose over the anti-cuts. Yeah, we've just seen a little bit of a moment, but he's managing to just about hold on, I think. So
yeah, just as I closed the window.
nothing too bad. You might be able to catch it on the stream.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, isn't it, in this LMP2 car, especially in these high-speed corners, to really get the car turning in the way you want it to do. Sometimes it responds on a dime, and sometimes it takes a little bit more coaxing.
Yeah, especially when you got some new boots on. It's a very fun to drive once you get the tires up to temps. But the last stint, when we decided to extend, we decided that I do a 140-minute stint more with the used tires I had. That was like the 5-4 last laps were dancing on ice.
Yeah, I can imagine that might be something you're familiar with, though, in Finland. That might be a bit of ice driving that might have been coming in rather handy driving through the winter months.
Well, I have a rear-wheel drive car, so so that helps maybe.
Maybe not the same amount of downforce than you'd get in the LMP2.
No. Yeah.
Every bit of practice has helped.
Yeah, little less wing.
But as Hasse was alluded to, he's really stuck me in it because he's saying that I know a bit of Finnish, and I'm not going to try and embarrass myself in speaking to you in full Finnish sentences. So a little bit here and there, but some of your driving was magical. So I've just got to say, Sinolin Velho, you've been an absolute wizard.
Oh, really? Kiitos paljon. Kiitti. I had a really good time. I liked it. I've been loving to drive this car. So.
Well, I hope you'll be able to celebrate later on, and you can go keep this. Cheers for a great race.
Yeah, I got my apple juice here, so I'm keep this for you guys. So. Yeah.
Thank you very much, TS Caroline, and good to have you in the booth. But before we say goodbye, is there anyone you want to give a shout out to before you scoot on off? Is there anyone you want to give a shout out to here on the stream before we scoot you away?
No, sanotaan, että kaikille, ketkä katsoo Suomesta tätä kissaa, niin puuron voimalla mennään, ihan jees.
I'm certainly not that good at Finnish, but I understood a little bit of that.
Yeah, you know porridge. You know word porridge. Porridge, Puura, yeah. Okay, but
Thank you very much.
Having fun.
Having plenty of fun as it is, and we're going to be wishing you and your PM Esports teammates the very best in this race. Thank you. Take care. So, Hasse, that was Matthias Karjalainen in the booth, and he's been absolutely enjoying his sort of graveyard shift, been putting in a good run of things for his PM Esports team, and now we're following Pippian Krajeveld, who is 34 seconds behind Jacques Verhoeven up ahead in the Project Dynamic car. But then he's got Freddie Scattini for company, just 20 seconds back. So he's in his little in a little bit of a pack at the moment, as we see SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, exit out of the pit lane and back out on track.
And what a beautiful interview that was. That sounded more or less like having Ari Vatanen in the booth and for a bit of a talk, and it only got more realistic. Talking about rear-wheel drive cars on icy roads. Indeed, that was beautiful. And I have to say, I am a big fan of Finnish racing drivers, be that Formula One or rallying. I don't really care. And when they get interviewed, well, it's all the better. For me, one of the most charming dialects of English you can ever find around. And also, it seems that the Finns in general seem to have a very good sense of humor, also right down my alleyway. So beautiful indeed.
Exactly. It's very, very rare though, when you're interviewing a Finn, to get answers out of them, as you know, with Kimi Räikkönen with his famous couple word interviews, and it was good to actually have Mateus there just in the booth and give us a bit of a laugh to have with him there, because he's been doing a great job and he's definitely deserves the praise for his long stint through the night.
Yeah, indeed. Oh, look at this. By the way, I'm just gonna elaborate on your take on Finnish drivers and give it a more historical twist and go back a further 20 years or so. Well, a bit longer, of course. Kimi Räikkönen's been in Formula One for a long time, but this battle is heating up yet again. And while we've been away from it, well, it's really come together. But it's down to 5.7 seconds now. Look at this. Marius Breuer and the Ford GT is really turning the tables here. We're going to come back to that in a short moment. I'm going to touch upon something because it's funny, like how Kimi Räikkönen now has got this reputation for being the Finn with the short answers. But if you go back a few more years into the history of Formula One, there's another double world champion that was famous for maybe giving even shorter answers. If you think about Mika Häkkinen and his use of the word yes.
Yes. Well, he's still on sabbatical. I wonder when he's going to be coming back. He did take that sabbatical, and we've been waiting for him to come back to Formula One ever since. I'm certain it'll be any day now, Hasse. Any day, yeah.
Yeah, the return of Mika Häkkinen, I can't wait. I can't wait to see it coming. Maybe he's gonna come back to haunt Mick Schumacher and sometime overtake him around the side of a backmarker as well. We'll have to see about that, although I think chances are rather slim by now, to be honest. We're going to keep our eyes peeled on this battle. The gift, for now at least, that seems to be keeping on giving. It's certainly been nice to us for a long time, and it's still doing exactly that. And to be honest, I wasn't necessarily expecting it to come back together this quickly, but it's certainly showing that it is. It's now 5.5 seconds from Andy Flint to Marius Breuer, the German who's really been acing his stint so far. We've seen no mistakes on his part, and it's really showing on the gap to the car ahead.
Yeah, he's really been able to keep his car in good stead, and even though he's getting into, well, I guess his sort of the beginning of the mid phase of his stint, he's been able to look after his tyres and keep the pace going. It's very easy when you are chasing a car ahead of you to go hell for leather on the opening few laps and chew through the tyres and have none left for the remainder of your stint. So Marius Breuer doing a good job as it stands, keeping his tyres in good stead, keeping his car in good nick, and I think this is probably the reason why he's been able to catch up to Andy Flint, is because he's just been managing the pace, and he's now, as he comes across the line, I think the gap is going to be 3 seconds between Marius Breuer and Andy Flint up in front. And as you mentioned, this is when we're going to see some excitement, because Andy Flint's got some traffic to negate. He's already locked up the brakes a little bit as we came to him. And now Marius Breuer has spun. Oh, he just took a little bit too much speed in, I think. It didn't seem like there was any contact. There was no cars near him. He just took a bit too much speed into the first hairpin. So we're going to see a replay of exactly what has happened here. I think it is just a little bit of oversteer from too much speed in. He's already losing the rear of the car. The rear is already going on him. He tries to get on the brakes to get it slowed down, but it's not enough, and he's managed to stop it pirouetting all the way around. Only a 90-degree spin, but still, that's really dropped him back, and now the gap, 8 seconds.
8 seconds indeed, and rather a surprising turn of events. It seems to be going so well, and the curse seems to be picking up in its relative strength here. A very late exit, and an apex as well from Marius Breuer. So late that it's basically all the same, aiming really just for straight line speed all the way down here, maybe trying to maximize the slipstream from the iRacing Netherlands Ferrari in front. Of course, a lap car getting a little bit nervous there on the braking, the Ferrari, and of course Marius here is gonna want no such things as he's closing up. There's a Mercedes GT3 up there as well. And speaking of GT3s, the running order hasn't changed in the GT3 class for a long time indeed. Robin van Brink for DSCDA Esports Silver, and that 216 Audi R8 Edward has been leading for hours on end now. I actually don't even recall when they took the lead. It's that long time ago by now, but it's been an absolutely sterling job. And when you look at this Audi, it's one of the few cars, one of the few GTs at least, that don't have the interchangeable and replaceable body panels that the LMP2 have. It's one of the few cars across the entirety of the field that seems to be, and I'm crossing my fingers, I'm knocking wood very silently because I don't want to wake the spirit of Snelle into a crazy barking session all of a sudden. But they're running with a very clean car still.
Yeah, I was about to mention as you were talking through that it is absolutely immaculate. Every single panel on that car seems to be as it was when it came out onto the circuit. Maybe with a little bit more of a bit more marble, a little bit more rubber on it, but still looking absolutely lovely. And I think we mentioned earlier, Has, we didn't actually get to have a chance to talk about it. It's about our favourite livery, and this is a nice looking paint scheme. They've got this sort of the red, white, and blue. It's a colour scheme that goes well on pretty much every single car, and they've done a very good job to get the lines along the side panels to really complement the shape of the Audi here.
Yeah, it's a car that we didn't see so much during our stint in the booth last night. Of course, given the fact that it was dark for the vast majority of it. A bit of a shame indeed.
As well.
It's a very, very nice looking car, and it's not the easiest of machines to paint on, so to say. Some of the cars have lines that are a little more say immersive.
SVG's just set another fastest lap.
Indeed, he has. He's shaved up another 1/10 of a second of his lap time, and that means he's down to a 51.4 for his purple lap there. Very, very swift indeed, to say the least. Putting it softly here. And Andy Flint is to a larger and larger degree having to check what's in the mirrors, not only because of traffic, but because there is an actual battle for position that's waiting to happen here. Marius Breuer, of course, with a bit of traffic to negate up the road, but seeing as how I think he'll do so quickly as well. And I'm thinking here, look at this car. To my best of memory, they had a bent rear wing before, and that's been fixed. So I'm thinking the .exe 110 car might have spent their fast repair while they can still get some bang for it, and that might also be the explanation towards their sudden, you can say, the refinding of their pace, because they certainly had it earlier in the race. Oh, as the Ferrari goes wide, Marius Breuer sneaks up the inside and goes past, all in a safe manner in the end. But that could very well indeed be the explanation we were looking for earlier.
Yeah, it could potentially be. It does look pretty much immaculate. I can't see anything else that has any amount of damage on it. So you could be bang on the money there, Hasse, with the fact that Marius Breuer has potentially taken his fast repair for this race. But that does mean he's walking a bit of a tightrope now. From now till the end, the next 4.5 hours it will be, that he's going to need to be watching where he goes, watching all the cars around him, and probably breathing in a little bit tighter than he would normally do when he sees the cars going too wide, through wide with him, through some of the corners when he has to try and carve his way through the field, which he will inevitably be able to do at some point, being a multi-class endurance race. He's going to have his eyes on Storkson, definitely as well. The rest of his .exe esports team will have to all work together to keep the car clean across the line, but they're doing a good job at the moment. And Simracersworld is slowly but surely closing back up to Andy Flint, the Digital Apex racing car in third position. Has now actually come into the pits. So this is the point in the race where we see the drivers now. Simracersworld has got, once he gets past this GTE, a bit of clear air, and he is going to try and use that clear air to good effect. In fact, he's going to get clear air much sooner as the Ford GT, not the Ford, as the Ford GT, yes, carves his way through the Porsche RSR.
Carves its way through the Porsche RSR. I think the Porsche RSR is still in the hole and behind. And to the best of my visual abilities, Ed, I think the Ford actually went around the Porsche instead of through it. But nice attempt there anyways. Sorry, mate, I had to. It's been so long, and I took a bit of I've taken my fair share from you earlier on. It's only right that you get what's coming to you, young man. Be careful which ships you place out into the sea, as they say.
Young man.
Anyway, yeah, I believe it's
young man.
I believe it's young man.
No need to feel down. I said young man.
Oh, we're in the zone of the village people here. Certainly, you could see the.
It's fun to stay at the COTA.
Oh, we've flown to a new level indeed here with Edward May alongside me in the booth, and it's a great amount of fun indeed to be rather serious about it. And honest, Gianni van der Graats here in the 84 Kart Academy LMP2 was actually rather close to the Apex Racing number 11 here, currently driven by Vincent Awesomes. And he's gonna try and go safely around the 110. Marius Breuer making sure of that. And I have to say, Marius Breuer, except for his little ballet pirouette there on the tippy toes of the Ford GT down at turn 1 not too long ago, he's been putting in a very, very, very strong stint so far. By the way, a car that we have not had a look at in a very, very long time. A car that to me looks to also have spent their fast repair here at this relatively late stage of the race, which is of course the thing to do. You want to spend it while you can still use it for a few hours, and while it's not of course too late. Here's Dan van der Ven, the 1-2-1 car of Team DRC Red, and they've been in this position for a long time. It was Bram van Putten who really put in a monster stint through the night, and he had monstrous pace about him as well. Gained back so much time on the cars around while keeping it relatively clean, and they've been sitting there in second for quite some time now, with 5 minutes up to the Sim Controls Volante car in the lead, and they got 5 minutes down to Marius Breuer and .exe as well. And of course he's well past Andy Flint, by the way, who just had a pit stop, and then we'll see how things stands once Marius dips in for his very same.
Yes, and I think it will be in the next few laps. I don't think he'll be coming in just yet, because obviously the Ford GT is much more economical, and we do often see Marius Breuer extending his stint out longer. All of the .exe esports drivers have been able to use the Ford's good fuel economy to great effect, and that probably means that potentially by the end of this race they might be able to take one less fuel stop than their competition, which could be enough to seal the deal against Andy Flint's Digital Apex Racing team.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed, the Digital Apex Racing team, who's also been very much up there in this fight. Looking at podium places earlier on, but now it's a tough ask if Marius Breuer and the .exe car, because mind you, when we had these cars early on in the race, the .exe car actually led the GT class for some time, and they were very far up the running order for a very good portion of the race as well. I'll take it they were in for repairs. They had damage as well. It seemed to impede them, but they're back running, having spent the fast repair, and with a fresh, clean car indeed. I think they could cause trouble. Not so much for either Sim Controls Volante Esports or for the Team DRC Red car, Those two are too far ahead. I would believe that barring any major incidents, they're not going to catch up to him. But I do believe that they could cause trouble for the Digital Apex car and their hunt for podium places, which for a long time as well looked to be a real possibility. Which is very, of course, let me just make it clear that of course it very much still is, but it didn't look they had such a fight on their hands.
No, they didn't, and that's the beautiful thing about endurance racing, is that anything can happen, and it certainly has this race, hasn't it? As we've been seeing action everywhere we look, and well, as we see the Team DRC red car come into the pit lane, that's a great story to shine a bit of a light on as well. The fact that they ended up on their roof at one stage, didn't they, Haas? So it was a shocking moment to see in the race that the Team DRC red car had a bit of a coming together with their teammates actually in the TRC blue car, just having to navigate some traffic. They got caught up, crossed over each other's lines. Unfortunately, that saw the DRC red car going worse for wear, but still charged through the field to come back from such a disappointing moment in the race to where they are now is a brilliant achievement for them.
Yeah, it really is. It has to be said, and someone's worth mentioning as well in the realm of comebacks, because the iRacing Netherlands blue car, their Mercedes GT3, we've seen them before, we've followed them before. It's the 222 machine. They've had Pascal Tigelaar behind the wheel of that car for quite some time now, and they came from last to now being not first though, after all, but in third place in class, with a car that I think, after having spent their fast repair, is still also looking very, very clean indeed. And I'm actually not sure they've even spent the fast repair, although I think they did have an incident early on and they might have spent it, but that makes it all the more impressive if they've been running since early days in the race without a single piece of contact anywhere. It doesn't take a lot to bend the panels on a GT3. It might have a slight scrape as I'm looking at the right rear panel there, although I'm not quite sure.
Front right on the front right on the bonnet looks a little bit squidged up. You can see a small little sort of a little bit of a gap, if you can see on the front right of the bonnet. So there might be a little bit of damage there potentially, but aside from that, looks absolutely clean as a whistle, doesn't it? And it's a nice looking iRacing Netherlands blue car, the Dutch orange in full force. They've got plenty of cars out, haven't they? The iRacing Netherlands team, and it seems that at the moment this is the best of the GT3 field in the podium places, but they have got a decent margin actually as well, to in front and behind, kind of in their own little bubble. Pascal Tigelaar with 3 minutes 30 seconds to the car behind and 4 minutes 50 seconds to the car in front.
Yeah, indeed, they're not really close to anyone at the moment, and the situation is that right now we don't really have anyone being close around the field, across the field per se, but I think the next few pit stops will bring a few cars closer to one another. We've got some nice, lovely gentlemen joining us in chat indeed. That's TSR Martin and Sepp Heberer. So goedemorgen and guten Morgen to both of you in your native tongues, if you will. As you know me, I'll take any chance to twist the tongue a bit in different few languages. It's not like I'm fluent in either Dutch or German, but I've picked up a bit in both over the years. I've traveled a bit in Germany actually when I was younger. I had it in school, of course, as well. I've been to Berlin on a few occasions, and I don't know if you've been yourself, Edward, but for any fans of kebab, and I think across the world there are many, they shouldn't be cheated, so to say, from a visit to Berlin, because it's certainly one of the places in the world to have such foods. You can find some incredible stuff, amongst a lot of other stuff as well. If you're more a sausage kind of person, not the curbs, but the actual sausages, you could get something called Currywurst in Germany, which is a very big sausage with a bit of a curry ketchup and a bit of curry powder on top as well. served most oftenly with the fries and mayo as well, and it is delicious indeed. And
You've reminded me, Hasse, of the Christmas market where I am, which has a sort of a few food stalls of sort of food from all around the world, and there is a nice sort of place that does amazing currywursts. They are sublime, absolutely lovely, and it's a shame actually that you mentioned it. You've reminded me that it's not actually happening this year due to current global events happening on. At the moment has meant that it's been cancelled, unfortunately, so I can't have one of those Christmas currywursts.
We've gone and made Seb Hebra hungry as well. So great success. Maybe, Seb, we should be looking at the currywurst sponsors for the SRW. I think that could really boost sales indeed. I shall be the advertising spokesman.
As long as we get free ones, I'm more than happy to be on board with that. As long as you get the free currywurst, that's all that counts.
To be fair and honest, I feel like finding one in the local supermarket or a couple even myself as well. It's kind of made me pretty hungry as well, just the thought of it. And it is a delicious... And actually, speaking of German trends, something I've never found anywhere else in the world, but I found it once. And that was where I discovered it for myself, at least. I was in Hamburg when I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old with my father, and we were at this, at the Hamburg-Altona train station. We were there, basically one of the purposes of the trip was to train spot and to look at trains. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the big machines, and I do still enjoy that on occasion. But anyways, back to the story. As we got this kind of small like food truck as well, or like a little portable food stand. They had these wonderful like pieces of bread with two sausages and then cheese, and it had just been standing there at some heat, and just like it was really molten into it. And I've never found it anywhere else, neither in Berlin or anything. I don't know if it's like a local thing in Hamburg or northern Germany or something. I don't know what it's called or whatever. I don't recall anything but the look, the smell, and the taste. I do certainly still recall from the age of 8. That was an amazing a bit of food, and I'd give a lot to get that back for a moment.
Well, hopefully, if people are in the chat have any idea what Hasse is rambling about, please write in, and maybe we can get to the bottom of this, because that does admittedly sound absolutely delicious, Hasse, and I think I'd like to figure out what it is. So if ever I travel outside the UK, obviously the most exotic place I've ever been to is Skegness, so that shows a little bit about me.
Well, speaking of UK delicacies, both of my trips to Edinburgh, that is, after all, still in the UK, although a lot of the Scots would probably prefer otherwise. In all respect due to that, I'm not putting any opinions in that case. As a matter of fact, I think I'll be a cliche bumhole and just say freedom. But indeed, that wasn't my point to make jokes. My point was actually to say that I am a huge fan of a proper round of fish and chips as well. And my word, that's some good stuff on display.
Oh, you've reminded me of a place nearby that does absolutely amazing fish and chips. Oh, it's been so long since I've been there. I might get some after the stream. But they also do some really amazing things. They do like deep fried halloumi. Oh, it is so good. It's like, it's just the greatest thing in the world, honestly. If you ever get a chance to try it, Hasse, get some deep fried halloumi. It's brilliant.
I shall try that out at some point. My heart just sunk. I just read in chat that James Earl Jones III has passed. And to those of you who don't know, maybe he'll be more familiar in the role of Darth Vader, amongst other roles in his career. So rest in peace. And as a great Star Wars fan myself, that's particularly saddening. I think that's one of the main reasons that I feel a little sad from reading that, to be honest. I'll do my best not to let it affect me too much over the next 17 minutes of broadcasting. We shall keep the light tone and the mood up anyways. And by the way, 17 minutes. Edward, time has flown by in not too long. We'll have a double jack attack joining in and taking over for the rest of the race.
Yeah, we will, and it's good to have them here at the start of the race and at the end of the race. They are always ever the professional, and you'll be in the absolute capable hands of the pair of them. I've commentated numerous times with Jack Oliphant alongside him in the BSR, and he's a lovely lad. He's a good boy, but he said earlier on that he was when we were passing over to me that he was going to be given over to the wonderful Hasaroma and the not so wonderful Ed May. So maybe I'm not going to be so nice to Jack on this one, and maybe I'm going to stitch up good old Jacko there.
So, well, anyways, coming into our last 15 minutes of broadcasting here, and I think very much so. It's perhaps in its place that we get kicked out of the booth and our nonsense gets replaced with something that's a little bit more to the point of things. But on the other hand, for those times where not much is happening in the race, it's all about having fun. And Edward, we certainly have been having a bucket load of fun here, both last night and this morning as well. It's been an absolute pleasure yet again, and I just have to say I really love doing these endurance races with you. It's not the first time we've done it, and I sincerely hope it's not the last either.
It certainly won't be a hassle. If there's anything to come by, I'm going to be enjoying every endurance race we get to do here on Simracersworld TV. And if I'm having you in the booth, well, I guess I'll have to prepare for it and try and compose myself to avoid the fit of the giggles that often comes with the pair of us in the booth. As we see Shane Van Gisbergen again setting a fastest lap of the race so far. He has been absolutely on it. You would have thought maybe that as he's been going out, he'd be getting fatigued, he might be slowing down, but no, if anything, he's getting faster and faster, which is an ominous prospect for all of the drivers out on track that are trying to catch up to him, trying to beat him, because at the moment, he's looking absolutely impervious.
Yeah, indeed, he is he's smashing it along at a rate that no one else can really sustain. And I just want to mention that we were asked about liveries earlier on, and I never really got to mention the Apex Hunters United Esports LMP2 car, but I have to say the rust detailing, or the rust-esque detailing on that shark fin is very, very, very well done, and it looks very nice. And
It does, yeah.
Yeah, I just have to, it gives it looks like something straight out of StarCraft or something. It looks like a Terran spaceship more than it looks like a humanoid race car. Not that Terrans aren't humanoids, I was kind of contradicting myself there anyways. But on to the point, it's a very good looking car.
Exactly, I think we can have a little bit as we get into the last bit of our time here, at least for me and you, Hasse, we can have a run through some of our favourite liveries of the evening. Lighten the mood a little bit, and I think we can go down to second place in LMP2 because the CXR Project Black, look at that lovely, nice, bright green and chromed silver livery. It's such a nice job that the CXR guys have done on it, and look at it, it's absolutely a sight to behold, isn't it, Hasse?
Yeah, it is. It's that is absolutely brilliant as well. It's a beautiful machine, we have to say, and fair play, full kudos to them for the work on that one. Also, the Sim Controls Volante car, although slightly bent, they're still massively in the lead, so it doesn't seem to be impacting the pace at all. We've mentioned it before, sorry, but they do have a wonderfully looking car as well that goes across the range, and I think their sort of visual identity here is something that can translate on to pretty much any car rather nicely as well. In this club of good-looking GTEs, we've certainly grown to really like the .xe110, the so lovely how it's gotten the nickname even, and it is the Purple Raccoon, which we of course did do indeed like. And well, any else of your favorites, Edward?
I do admittedly like the lead of the GT3 class, or rank in the the SCDA Esports Silver car. It's one of the few cars that is nice and clean and crisp, so you can see the livery in all of its glory. And it's not just about the colour palette, it's about the fact that they're able to contour the lines, which, as we mentioned earlier, is a tricky job to do, especially in the Audi R8, because when you see the amount of sort of aero lines, the way the car is sort of shaped, it doesn't give you too much real estate to make a good livery with. So they've done a brilliant job with it. You can see as well on the front of the car, plenty of sponsors on it, so it's looking nice and crisp and clean.
It is looking very, very good indeed. And they are coming in towards the final hours of this race. It's looking better and better. And a warm welcome to Hendrik de Grave and to Jacko as well. Jacko telling us a lot of changes since the last time he was here. Well, if last you were here, Jacko, is when you left me and Edward in charge last night. Then, well, no wonder there's been a few changes since then in the race. It's a fair few hours ago anyways. I feel like I had to play that joke. It was probably a bit unfair, and I'm sorry.
He's fine. He's a big boy. He can manage.
Take it. Hendrik de Grave is there with us. No Flemish Simsports here. That's very true. I hadn't even thought about it. Perhaps because I'm so used to them always being there. But that would be all the more reason to think about that Flemish Simsports is not here. That's one of the few things that could have enriched us even more with this race so far. Mew, nice to have you along. Always, mate. A pleasure. And the Frequencers is here as well. I think what a race. And indeed, what a race it has been. And
trying to think of other liveries as well, Hasser, and I think another one that could spring to mind is essentially the CCTS Esports Endurance car. Now, that has been in the wars a little bit here and there, but when the car was looking nice and clean and was not involved in too much strife, you can see the car now. It looks quite nice. It's got a bit similar to what you might expect sort of real life. It's a bit understated, a bit not too out there compared to some of the other liveries, but looking at it, it is something that you would be able to potentially imagine seeing in real life.
Yeah, indeed. It has a bit of zebra meets cheetah, or meets fades to black, Metallica, if you will. But a very nice looking car indeed it is. And you're right on the part that it is something you would probably see rolling out there in real life. But to a reminder to all the people that say that you don't see out there liveries running in real life. Maybe not in Europe as much as at least. But if you take a look on the other side of the globe, for us at least, particularly in Japan, you'll see some...
Are you thinking of the Hatsune Miku car?
I'm thinking exactly of that Mercedes we had in the Sunday GT3 World League with the anime livery, which I've been quite a lot on Gran Turismo Sport in the past years, and I have to say there's, given the Japanese origins of the game, there seems to be quite a lot of these anime liveries being designed and being raced as well. So, and as such, I've also been following the actual Super GT series for some years. And in that series, there are actually quite a number of anime GT3 cars. It's mostly the GT3 or the GT300s, as they're called in the Super GT series. But they are there, they exist, and they are just as out there as you see them in when you see them in I was about to say video games and or simulators, and most often I think it's actually replica liveries that we see when we see those kind of designs.
Yeah, exactly, and it is something that you did mention, the sort of the wacky out there liveries that you can often see on certain cars, and it's. I like to think of cars as sort of a bit of a canvas for a lot of artwork to be put on all of these, all of the designers for the liveries. A lot of work gets put into sort of designing a livery on a race car. There's sort of almost like the brand for the entire team. It's what all of the people watching see of your car. So you need to use it to make a good impression, and you want to be having that good livery because it also. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but sometimes if you get a nice livery, it might attract some sponsors. They see a car with a nice livery and think, oh, that one's getting in quite good coverage. That one's liked by the fans for its paint job. Let's get some sponsorship on that. And it helps out to no end if you are able to get a nice, competent livery designer on board. Of course, the sponsors in real life would have a lot of say over what the livery turns out to be in the end, but still, it's invaluable, isn't it, to have someone in your team who's capable with Photoshop or capable with whatever program it is to get you these lovely liveries, as we just see another nice livery in one of the Mercedes GT3s just being passed there. A nice matte finish on that one there.
Yeah, very much so, and it's also a big truth what you just said. Livery designers in sim racing, and especially the closer you come to the competitive side of things, where people are becoming more and more professional, and so are the teams. And of course, that also means that the sponsor deals and sponsorships that the teams are looking at is becoming more and more professional. And of course, this demands more and more of livery designers. We do have free hands, so to say, more or less, in the world of sim racing, and I think freer hands than that we see designers have in real life, which shows sometimes to the better and sometimes to the worse. You know, it's not so that a more complicated livery is necessarily better looking, but you do see some very striking designs where you think that probably wouldn't have made it to real life. But anyways, Wouter de Mulder leading for DSCDA Silver Esports, or Esports Silver, I'm getting it the wrong way around there, and that very good looking Audi R8 LMS. They've been leading for a long time indeed. Project Dynamic 2 is leaving the car now to Will Egby, so it seems to me. And it's still Pascal Tigelaar for iRacing Netherlands Blue in third in GT3. In GTE, it's SimControl's Volante Esports with Daniel Nestorovic behind the wheel of the car. It's Daan van der Ven in the Team DRC Red Porsche 911. And I was about to say it's a Porsche 123. Of course, it isn't, because Marius Breuer, look at the advantage here, down to Andy Flint, Digital Apex Racing. 40 seconds a rear now, Edward.
Yeah, it's been a great job from the .exe Esports car just to get through. It was under the pit strategy, really, that he was able to get through, get the clear air, and then get ahead. Didn't need to make an on-track overtake that could have slowed the pair of them down. He didn't have to spend any time stuck behind trying to figure out when and where he could pass. He did it under the pit stop strategy, and it's working to no end in the .exe Esports team's favour, because, as you mentioned, Hasse, the gap is surprisingly large. When we left off, we were wondering to see when the gap would come out, when they went through the pits, what was going to happen. But we've had that answer almost immediately. Although I'm thinking, Hasse, that it might have been extended a bit due to potentially a bit of tyre saving. We do know that the Ford is capable under the fuel saving, but also it's relatively light on its tyres when compared to something like the... That's not going to be doing the tyres any good, though, is it, Asa, doing something like that? Slide in there, scrubbing all the rubber. Thankfully, you can't flat spot in iRacing, otherwise you'd be so shaking and shuddering if you had a motion rig, that's for certain.
Yeah, very much so. That was a bit of a close call, and it's not exactly what they need. It's the second time Marius Breuer has done that. I think in turn 1 he's had a very similar incident with a very similar outcome as well, which was just a short spin, which seems to be the characteristics of the car, and it's an outspoken problem for the Ford GT that once the rear end seems to go, it's very, very hard to control it indeed. So you would understand that. That's also maybe why we're not seeing that many of them racing, and it's nice to see one at the competitive end of things here. SVG, Shane van Gisbergen, just to round off our classes, as we're gonna go off the air for a short moment and leave you in the capable hands of the double jack attack of Jack Werrell and Jack Oliphant. But just to finish it off with our top class in LMP2, Shane van Gisbergen for the Apex Hunters United Esports LMP2 car. The number 3 machine is leading by a comfortable margin of almost 4 minutes to the CXR Project Black car. The 46 currently driven by Peter Smith. And in third, it's Julien Rambeau in the next level racing by SJS Esports car, who's been there in third place for a very long time indeed. They're looking pretty clean, and they're doing a rather good job of keeping it going. They have a massive margin, by the way, of 10 minutes or so, and that translates into 5 laps, even 6 laps, I think, down to Falco Veerkamp in the Team DRC orange car. So a very good position to be in for all of the top runners. Not really anything close, at least not at the moment, and I think it's going to take something dramatic to shake up the top 3 running order, at least of the LMP2 class.
Exactly, Hassan. I think then we can run through the GTE field. Just before we go through, we can run through the last 2 fields. As Matthew Briggs says, gents, please stop giving us the commentator's curse. Yeah, well, it might shake it up though if we keep saying this. You might see some difference in the end result. You can forgive us for guessing you a little bit now. You can see, focusing now onto the GTEs.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm just reading the chat. You're being a distraction with this.
No, sorry.
Here we go. We're going to focus now. We're going to have to focus. Hassan, we're going to get through this last bit. We've done so well up until this point, and we will go through if it kills me. So, Daniel Nestorovic in the Sim Controls X Volante Esport car, leading the GTE field by a margin of 6 minutes and 23 seconds to Dan van der Ven in the Team DRC red car that we saw have some incidents earlier on, but have fought brilliantly to get up into second place in class, who themselves have got a 5 minutes and 50 second margin to the driver that we've been focusing on quite a lot this race. It is, of course, the Purple Raccoon car, Marius Breuer in the .exe esports hashtag family machine, who are themselves 37 seconds clear of Andy Flint in the Digital Apex racing car. And then, Hassar, I think I will let you finish it up with a round out of the GT3 field.
Yeah, as we went through it a few minutes ago, I don't see the great necessity in it, but if you wish so, Edward, I'll do it again. It's Wouter de Mulder for the DSCDA Esports Silver Car, leading Will Egby in Project Dynamic 2 by about 2.5 minutes, and another 3.5 minutes almost down to Pascal Tigelaar in the iRacing Netherlands blue car, who's just got into the pits. And with that said, we've reached the 20-hour mark of this race, which means that it's sign-off time from Edward and myself. Thank you so much for joining in with us. Edward, do you have any last comments to add?
No, just thank you everyone that's been tuning in thus far, and I hope you'll enjoy the next 4 hours with, of course, as we mentioned, Jack Hasser all the stream long. The Jack Attack will be with you very shortly to bring you the finale, the closing stages of this 24 hours of COTA.
Very much. So leave us a like if you enjoyed the broadcast or the part of the broadcast. Make sure you tune in to part 5 for the end of the race, the final 4 hours. And with that said, well, thanks for joining in with me and Edward. And until next time, bye-bye.